All right. So on this episode of the podcast, we had Nick Wingate on. Nick is a good friend of mine and Gary. We're both Orca dealers where we sell Focal, Mosconi, and Illusion, which is the brands that Orca carries. I believe he's the technical trainer of Orca. So he goes around to all the different dealers and educates them on the different brands. And he's been a huge influence in, I think, my career in education and things of that nature. And this is a conversation with Nick, just talking about, I guess, where he came from, his background, and where we might go in the 12-volt future. So without further ado, it's a great conversation. Let's get to it.
That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that tune when I'm back on top in June. I said that's life.
All right. This is all being documented. We can hold it against you in a court of law.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, so welcome, Nick.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Obviously, we've been friends for some time now, and I feel like I'd say you're probably the first rep ever in my career that I learned a lot from. You know what I mean? Where you actually took your time to educate. And maybe that's just because you work more on the technical side, but I feel like as I saw my career progress, I think you've had a lot of influence on just kind of the technical background of kind of what we do.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't done on purpose. Trust me.
How we've gone through in depth how Matt and I both got into car audio. I have no clue what was your first experience with audio or car audio? And
I think I know a few stories, but I don't know if I know like
You want
the official story.
The very first one, the very first time I got into this?
What hooked you? What got you into this?
Oh, home audio.
Okay.
Okay, hang on. Let me go all the way back here. And that's going to be 48 years. Yeah, I was 12. Yeah. I was 12 years of age, and I went over to a buddy of mine's house, and his dad had just purchased his first quote unquote audio system, and it was neater than shit. I walked in the house, and I heard some jazz being played, and I swore to God somebody was playing a trumpet. And I walked in the room, and here's a pair of speakers, which at the time I didn't know what they were, but they were Yamaha NS1000s, which they still build. And there's this great big amplifier sitting on the floor that's green, and it's got meters on it. And I was just like, and that's the turntable. And I was like, well, that's the coolest looking record player I've ever seen. And the music was amazing. Of course, here's this big Macintosh 2-channel amplifier. And that was it. I got hooked immediately. And, and then I scraped and saved every dime I had from that point forward, and it took me about a year and a half. And I bought if I remember correctly, it was a Pioneer receiver with a dual turntable and a pair of Norman Lab speakers. And that was my very first audio system. And then it was just a matter of me trading up, which is what we did, because at the time, the place eventually that I went, and helped, which his name is Brock Audio in Beaumont, Texas, you could take equipment and trade it in, which was really cool. So yeah, I guess he was doing that once every 6 months.
And what transitioned that to car? When did you get involved in the car world, and how?
I got my first car, official car.
What was it? What was the
It
car?
was the first car was a was a 1978 Pontiac Grand Prix, and it was like everybody. There's a really cool story behind it. I first of all, my dad and I were building a conversion van back in the day, and my mother was adamantly against me having one of these things, and I think we all know why. And so we scrapped it. Decided we are just like, okay, you know what, we're gonna make her happy. And so because of me being 16, 17, whatever the hell it was back then, there was just stipulations: no Trans Am and no Camaro and no Mustang. Well, there went everything out the freaking window. So I was pissed, but I'm like, okay, because Deb was going to help me buy it. And I was devastated. And I told one of my friends at school, whose dad is the Pontiac dealership owner at the time. Um, I told him about it, and he said, "Well, let me see what Dad has." And sure enough, Mr. Baker uh, called my house, and he had something that he thought I should go see. So I went down there with my dad, and we took a look at it, and it was a silver Pontiac Grand Prix Mamaw car. Now that's what I thought when I saw it. I thought, "You've got to be kidding me!" But the closer I got to it, the more I went, "Those wheels and tires don't look right. Those are Pirelli P7s. What the hell is this doing on a? That's a standard transmission. What the hell is this?" And it turns out it was a police undercover car that they had ordered for the county. It had a high output 305 V8 underneath it. And I was just like, "You're kidding." He goes, "No, the county can't afford it. Do you want it?" Hell to the yes, I want this. Absolutely. And so when I got that, that was the cool. I took it around the block and I was just like, "Oh, this is the coolest thing in the world." And I had so much fun in that freaking car because I would smoke vets and smoke Mustangs and eat. Oh, it was so much fun.
Did it have a footprint gas pedal?
No, thank God it didn't. I was never part of that shit. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It was just not part of my gig. And it was a cool thing because here's this stealth car with this monster engine, this kick-ass transmission, WS6 suspension package off of a Trans Am. It was kick-ass, and the AM radio. Who in the hell heard of an AM radio in a Mamaw car? I mean, come on. And I'm like, this has got to go. And a bunch of people had the old Craig Power Play 8-track stereos, and Alpine had just brought out its first radio back then. It was a cassette player, and I almost bought one, but Pioneer had brought out its first cassette player in Dash that did not have an amplifier built into it, and it had this 32 pin Molex plug on there were three of them on the back. You should have seen these things. They're huge. And I was like, "What the hell is this for?" Amplifiers. What? Oh, come on. Now this was at a dealer in Beaumont and in Beaumont, Texas. And he's like, "Yeah, let me show you." He said, "This is the coolest thing." Yeah, the amplifier was like 40 watts a channel by two. And then they had another 15 watt per channel amp by two. And so I bought the whole damn thing. I'll never forget it because the head unit was $599. The amps were like $400 a piece. And then, of course, it was obligatory. You had to buy Jensen triaxle 6x9. That's all there was to it. You had no choice. Even though the back deck was a 4x10, no, shit, no, you buy the adapters, put the 6x9 in, here we go.
Hang it down, a little bit of an angle.
Yeah,
Yep.
It didn't make a shit. Hang it down.
Matt has no clue what we're talking about right there. I saw it in his eyes. He's never heard of that before.
No, Matt's going, "What
I'm
in
sitting
God's
here and
name
I'm just like, this is a
Like,
little
Matt's
different
like,
than how I got it on.
What's a 4x10?
What the hell is Nick talking about?" And we put
In my head, I'm just like, I'm either so young or Nick is so old. I'm just trying to
Nick's
figure
old.
out. I'm trying to figure out where that falls.
Yeah, Nick's old. And really, truly, and we found a way, and it was either a 4-inch, which I think it was. We put 3 4-inch drivers in the top of the dash. We made a center channel. and really didn't know what the hell we were doing, but we figured out mixed mono and it actually worked. And car sounded, for what it sounded pretty damn decent. Everybody got in the car and they were like, "Oh my God, listen to this thing." And it made me go buy Nakamichi Dragon cassette deck, and that was a $1,200 cassette deck. And then, you were buying the metal cassettes and, oh God, man, geez. At one time, I think I had 600 cassettes that I had made on that Nakamichi Dragon just for the
Oh my
car,
gosh.
for car stereo. Yeah.
So
What?
so Matt
Hold on,
Matt
yeah,
also
hold on.
has no clue what a Nakamichi Dragon setup was.
Go do a Google search. Type not
What
Dragon.
in that car in particular, right?
Yeah.
When you go back into young Nick and you're sitting there in that driver's seat, what's the one cassette tape that you remember always loading into that player?
Oh, hell yeah. That's easy. It's AC/DC's Highway to Hell.
Okay.
Holds up.
Yeah,
As
definitely
Matt would
holds
say,
up.
definitely
Yep.
holds up. Okay, so I have the most important question out of all of this that I'm going to start with a statement and then get to my question. When I was coming up in car audio and I was learning about sound and acoustics and cars and speaker placement and all of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
I felt that as a youngster that I was always looked down upon by like home audio guys, and car audio guys always had a really bad rap about that, like cars suck, the environment sucks, you can't make a car sound good like you can a house, and blah blah blah, and that you shouldn't even try, and that car audio guys don't know anything, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of the way I like, and I kind of, for a long time was like, yeah, that's bullshit. You don't know, like we can do good stuff, right? Well, compared to what we do now to what we did back then, they were 100% right.
They
But
were
for
correct.
a lot of guys, customer wise, come home audio to car audio.
Yes.
But most of the car audio installers that I know grew up in car audio and didn't grow up. They either grew up, my generation of like 80s and 90s, bass CDs and demo vans with walls of woofers and through to today. But from your point of view, you had like a reference level system before you got started.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and so how did that kind of shape and change the way you looked at a car? And were you happy with the car when you first did it? And how has your vision of all that changed through the years?
Well, from an imaging and staging standpoint, obviously that never mind. It was not going to happen. But at the time, it didn't matter because, this was about, I got to listen to AC/DC at whatever level I wanted to.
Mhm.
And at the time, that it was what it was really and truly about was the freedom to be able to listen to what I wanted to at whatever the hell level I wanted to at whatever the time I wanted to. That's what it truly was all about. And for a lot of us growing up back then and getting into car audio, that's really and truly what it was all about, because it was really difficult, unless you had your own place, that you were going to be able to listen to your music at your level at whatever time of the day or night it was. And if you were in school, if you were going to college, you had roommates to worry about, you had suite mates to worry about, you had dorm, the ramp advisor at A&M would come down on us like, oh God, he was an ass. I still to this day hate his guts, but he doesn't know that.
Unless he's a subscriber to the pod.
He'll call me, he'll find me and said, "I didn't know you." Yeah, you're a dick. You're still.
We'll send him a link.
Yeah, thanks.
Just kidding.
But that's what it was all about, and really and truly, until I traded that car off and got my Camaro, then things started to change, because that was 1984. I kept that car for 6 years, 5 years, something like that. And when I traded the car off and got the Camaro, George Reed had started Thunder on Wheels. And I was, working with the folks at Brock Audio, and they had brought car audio in. They had brought ADS, and they had Nakamichi and Alpine and Yamaha, which was the pinnacle. I mean, there wasn't anything better except for Rockford. And the guys down the street had Rockford, and they were the ones who were putting all the sound offs on. So literally, we built my car to go compete in Thunder on Wheels. Here I had ADS 320Is in the door. The that 5 1/4 was in the door. The tweeter was up in the top of the dash of the car where that 4x6 normally was on the left and right. We put the tweeter there. At the time, I had a Nakamichi TD 1200 Dragon for the car. I wasn't going to have anything else. Kiss my ass. No. Yes, I got a hell of a discount on that too from the Nakamichi rep. Praise God. It's the only way I was going to buy it. And we had an 11 band graphic EQ, subwoofer output control from Yamaha. I have 4 knock amps in the car and Yamaha 8s in the back with a really nice, sealed box for a pair of 8s. And went out and competed and realized that I didn't have enough SPL to go up against the assholes from Rockford. But that's when I met George Reed and became really good friends with George. Then, and that's when I decided, well, I better go get woofers to where I can do at least a 35 or a 40, and then I can go beat everybody else in sound, which I did. And that's kind of where it all got started right there. And until I met somebody by the name of Mark Fukuda. And then things changed. When I got the opportunity, living in Orange, Texas, Bridge City is literally 6 miles away. And, in Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange, this is kind of where the competitive car audio got started really and truly in the early 80s. That's where George Reed and the guys on Thunder on Wheels got started, and USAC got started right there in that whole area of Mark Barmore, and it became a hotbed. And I found out about this guy who was building custom stuff out of his house in Bridge City, Texas. And I saw some of his work. It was amazing. And I thought, I got to go meet this guy. And this
what
guy,
year is it?
83, 84, somewhere in there, 85 maybe. And I went to Mark's house, his mom and dad's house, and he was working out of his garage, and realized that this guy is nothing short of a genius. And I saw what he was doing, and I was just like, dude, this is the work he was doing is amazing. And his use of the quantum VSE stinking alarm was just, oh my God. He figured it out with a bank of relays, and man, he can make things move, open, close, turn lights on, turn lights off. I kept looking for the toilet paper dispenser in somebody's car. And that's really and truly when I saw Mark's work, that's when I realized, like, okay, there is something really cool going on here. And being in the hotbed in the middle of everything there, it was, man, in an area that only had about 325,000 people. We had 12 car audio stores.
Wow.
To support, yeah, but that's how busy everybody was, because if you didn't have an audio system in your car that was worth a damn, you weren't getting a date. You forget it. It was not going to happen. You forget it. So it was kind of a necessity. Plus, back then, everybody was so competitive to show their work and to show their wares and to show what they were capable of doing. The only place of proving it was in the lanes. And that's kind of where this whole thing got started. And we were all still doing Thunder on Wheels, which was mainly George and a couple of judges listening to it from just a timbre and tonality standpoint, a little bit of install, which was a whole lot, and then a whole buttload of SPL, which was really cool. But it wasn't my gig, because I kept thinking there's something better available. There's got to be. And then Car Audio Nationals and with Alpine hit. And when the Alpine rep came into Brock Audio and started talking to us about it, I was just like, so we're going to be, this is something off the West Coast. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I got a copy of the rule book. And then they start talking about imaging and staging and having depth and three dimensionality. And I was just like, this is going to be hard as hell to pull off. This is way cool. And that's when I got the CD, you know, the Speed of Sound, that Alpine CD back then. And I listened to it. It's the first time I ever heard a direct-to-disc recording from Sheffield Lab. And I was floored. And I told Mr. Brock, you know, we got to order Sheffield Lab stuff. And he goes, what the hell is that? You know, and that's when we started buying albums from them. We found out about CDs. This is when we found out about Telarc, and oh yeah, here we go. So yeah, that's kind of how I got involved with trying to figure out how to get the car to image and stage and have depth and three dimensionality, because we were going to build a car. We were going to tear the freaking Camaro down, and we were going to build it to do what we needed it to do. And it made us realize that this wasn't going to work. This car was not going to work. It was too damn big. You know, because God, we didn't even think about moving the seats back, and oh hell no, we didn't think about that. You know,
it's crazy how much that stuff has evolved, and probably when you know the competition stuff kind of hit its, I would say it's kind of, I don't know, I kind of think it peaked in the 90s, but there was some pretty wild stuff going on to try to make cars sound good, and the fabrication level got really insane from there.
I'm thinking I would love to see a young picture of Nick in his prime, just, you know, just in his old car competing. Oh my God, I would die to see that.
I need to pause for 1 sec. Sorry, I'm gonna run out. Okay. I will be right back as quick as I can.
Okay, we'll pause.
All right, everybody. Maybe go get my Maker's 46.
Right. So, and I feel like I should know this at this point because I feel like we've had so many drinks together at a bar. But what is your drink of choice?
I've got a couple.
If I'm ordering for you at a bar, what am I ordering?
You can order me a sidecar.
Okay. Good choice.
Yeah. It's a very simple drink. It's basically lemon juice, Cointreau, and a really, really good VSOP cognac. It's a third and a third and a third. And the story behind it is that happened to be Al Capone's drink that was made for him during Prohibition. And so my wife, we were on a cruise with the Winkers, and she had this bartender make this because she thought, and I've been like hooked ever since. Mm-hmm. It's like liquid crack. But you know, and I've enjoyed whiskey all my life, and I have a terrible affinity for it. You know, I had to take a break for about 20 some odd years from it because I got really bad sick on it one night. Oh,
really?
Yeah, I drank almost a bottle in about 4 hours one night. Didn't realize it, Matt. I didn't realize we were getting ready to go to midnight yell practice at Texas A&M, and we were at a place called the Dixie Chicken. And if y'all ever come here and go to College Station and visit Chris, we'll go. I'll make sure you go because it's just it's kind of a tradition at a tradition-rich school. But we were sitting there playing dominoes, and it was getting time for where we go. It was a Friday night before a football game. It's 11:30. It was time to walk across the street and go to Kyle Field.
Hold on. Blast from the past. Who, at this point, when you're doing this, who is the most popular football player on Texas A&M? I'm going to date you a little bit.
Hang on. My chair's messing with me. You know, that's a really good question. Not stop and think.
Who was the star football player at Texas A&M at that point?
There wasn't one because they were terrible.
Okay, I mean that's that's a fair answer.
No, it's just God's honest truth. They were awful. That's when Tom Wilson was the head coach, and Jackie hadn't gotten there yet. Jackie was about 3 years away before Jackie Sherrill got there and turned everything around. No, they were awful. I guess I could say that Curtis Dickey probably was. He ended up being a first-round draft choice of the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
He had world-class speed. This guy was huge. He was 6'3", weighed about 225, 230. And he's the first person to ever run a 4.15 in the 40.
Ooh, that's getting it.
Yeah,
Good Lord.
He was the 60-meter dash indoor champion for the NCAA, and he set a world record. I think it's still held to this day. And I mean, if he would, in 3 steps, he was full speed. And if he ever got past the defensive line, forget it. You were not going to catch him. Nobody was going to catch him. Unfortunately, he never had an offensive line that was worth a shit.
Mm-hmm.
But
so, did you ever watch the show Mad Men?
Who?
Did you ever watch the show Mad Men?
No, I never watched Mad Men.
No. So the whole reason that I started getting hooked on old fashions was because of Don Draper, which is the main character of Mad Men. And I feel like you would love Mad Men because, I mean, I feel like you grew up in that era.
It's a little bit further back.
Yeah, that predates
it. Is it? Really?
Yeah, that's in the early 60s versus the late 70s. Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. I know the premise behind it.
Yeah, but Don Draper, obviously just the fucking smoothest guy ever, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just so suave. And he would just pummel old fashions. It was like the gentleman's drink.
all day, every
day at work, at home. He would just pummel old fashions. And I remember watching that. I'm like, fuck, he's cool. I'm going to drink an old fashioned. and then I remember getting one at a bar. And then I took the first sip. And I was like, Jesus Christ, people drink this?
Put hair on your chest.
Yeah. Like
this is goat piss. Yeah.
It gets you growing up real quick.
Oh, yes, it does.
So I just kind of like acquired an actual taste to it. So now, I mean, it's like almost like drinking like Sprite.
Now you're a snob about it.
Yeah, I had a few guys over from work, and obviously they know I drink, basically exclusively old fashions. So I made them all an old fashioned. One of them said, just was all arrogant and was like, well, mama didn't raise no bitch, so hand it over to me. Right. So I basically made it how I make mine and gave it to him, and he started drinking it. And then he's like, you know what? I kind of starting to think mama raised a bitch. And then like he took one sip and that was it. And then another guy took a sip of like how I make it, and they're just like, oh my God, you drink this for fun? and then he just ate the 2 Luxardo cherries and then didn't drink anymore. So I don't know. It's a bunch of wuss. It's a good drink. I don't know.
Yeah, it was my drink of choice for a long time. Yeah.
So I'm sorry I had to derail this. I'm home by myself, and the dog, who is senile, needed to go out. And
understood.
It would have been bad. Would have been bad if my wife came home and the dog pissed her shit all over the floor. And
when the urge to purge hits, we all understand. It doesn't matter.
That whole combo started because I asked Nick if we were at a bar, what am I ordering for Nick? And his response was a sidecar.
Ah, nice. That's like a cousin to an old fashioned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
pretty
distant cousin.
And it's funny. I always try and change it up. So like, I just went. Me and my wife have started to do kind of like date night every week now that the older kid can watch the youngest, right? So we can have actual date nights now. And I've been trying to cycle it with like Manhattan, old fashioned, old fashioned. So
that's big stretch there, by the way.
Really?
Hey, that's me getting out my box.
But he's expanding his horizons now. Look, come on.
There you go.
All right. So where
So
were we?
where were we before I derailed this train?
We have a
We were
25-year-old just
we were basically trying to figure out how in the hell I
smooth Nick Wingate
yeah
in his
got
Yeah.
car.
into all this
Okay,
car audio crap, and that's
so
kind of how
you
it got started.
so you met Mark, and then that kind of pushed you to expand your vision. Then you guys started building something serious to compete in
Yeah, yeah, and
Car Audio
well,
Nationals was the goal, right? Did
right,
you finish
and
and make it there?
yeah, we made it. We went to Phoenix. A friend of mine in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is where I first actually met him. Was on the circuit. His name was Danny McDonald, and Danny had a Honda Civic that went to Car Audio Nationals, if I remember correctly. It's been so damn long. Um, and of course, we were used to Thunder on Wheels, and we did the best we could, given that we had never been introduced to kick panels, putting speakers in the kick panels, or Richards horns, or I shouldn't say Richards horns. I should say the SpeakerWorks horns. I'll get in trouble. God, the whole ways to call me. Um, and that's where we ran into a group out of Florida. That was Lou and Manville and those boys, and yeah, we kind of got it handed to us. Um, and because I remember, Manville's car and Lou's Mustang, and wondering what in the hell is JL Audio? What is this shit? And that's kind of where that we yeah, and I got a chance to listen to the Holdaway systems and got to meet Harry for the first time. If I remember correctly, I think Harry was there. It may have been IASCA finals first, but I think it was Cardio Nationals. Um, yeah, and it was eye opening. And being as competitive as I was back then, I didn't like to get my ass handed to me. I
Well,
was
it's
like,
never a good feeling for
no,
anyone.
no, but being competitive is one thing. Getting it handed to you, that's another. And so, it all came full circle and got to the point to where um, I was trying to figure out what to do with the car, and subsequently got involved with a gentleman and a very young man who was younger than I was at the time, and I was stupid young at 25 or 26. It was this uh, guy, name is Kenny Worthington, and his father-in-law opened up a shop about literally 2 miles away from Art Fukuda's Autographics in Bridge City, and they didn't know diddly squat about car audio business. They could build, they were really good, but they didn't understand business sense at all. And I happened to see the place open one day. I was commuting back and forth to Beaumont with the folks at Brock Audio in Beaumont, and I started stopping and talking to these guys and realized the passion they had for this was just incredible. And as I had started weaning myself away from Brock Audio, because I had come home from Texas A&M and gone to Lamar University's business school because it was way better than A&M's. I was commuting back and forth to Lamar, and I wasn't spending near as much time at Brock Audio anymore because I wasn't working for them, quote unquote. And I started working with these guys. And at the time, you know, Lanzar and Autotech and Kicker and Rockford, those were the four major players. That was in the South. That was it. And Kenny and Ken ended up getting Autotech into the store. They got Kicker into the store. They got Kenwood into the store, which was a big deal. And then they needed a speaker line. And I got them ADS because Brock Audio had dropped 12 volt. They had decided they were going to go nothing but straight home audio. So we got them ADS. And when they got ADS, it changed everything because there was an awful lot of clientele that came with it. And then all of a sudden, here comes somebody by the name of Brian Tolley who was the JL Audio Precision Power MB Court rep. Now, Mark Fukuda had MB Court, but he also had Alpine and Rockford. So we got offered JL Audio and Precision Power. Well, hell yes, because JL and Precision Power is what beat my ass at Car Audio Nationals. And I was just like, good, I can get them on our side. And that's kind of when things started happening a little more, and we got a little more involved in higher end audio, and I knew ADS already. And Nakamichi had decided they were going to get out of car audio. And then we started building cars. And we started building cars to compete in IASCA. Because IASCA was coming to Austin, Texas to have a show. And of course, JL wanted us to go because that's Lou and Manville's gig. And so, we built cars to go. And we did really well. And we beat a bunch of the USAC cars, which kind of pissed them off. And it pushed us. We were building kick panel cars, which God bless the Holdaways. I had actually called the Holdaways and talked to them about it because, we were trying to learn. And they were great. And just salt of the earth, be willing to help. Sure, not a problem. Let me explain. And once they talked about path links, it hit me. I'm going, well, of course, here's the equilateral triangle at home. How do we get it in the car? And I was just like, we can come close. But it all became about phasing. And then I started learning more about that. And then we had a guy who came in one day, knew we were building cars to compete in IASCA. And this guy wanted to build something extraordinary. And we were like, sure, not a problem. And he wanted to listen to speakers, amps, and all this. And I fired up ADS 320Is, 320Is, which was the best there was in car audio as far as I was concerned. And he said they sounded like shit. And that's a direct quote. And I'm thinking, who in the hell are you? And what are you used to listening to? You dickhead. Now, of course, I didn't say that. That's what I'm thinking. And I asked him, I said, so what exactly have you been listening to at your house? He said, you ever heard of a company named Wilson Audio?
Ah.
Yeah. He goes, well, I have a pair of Watt puppies. And oh, shit. Well, I knew what that was. And I was like, okay, you're real serious about this. Even he might as well spent $50,000 today on those speakers back then. And kind of told me, he said, that's what he wants his truck to sound like. And I'm like, okay, we're screwed. He said, but there's got to be better drivers out there. And that's when I did a bunch of research, found Orca Design, talked to Kimon, and that's literally how we got Focal Car Audio started in the United States, was that week, much to his chagrin.
So at this point, how did you know about Focal?
I literally found it in Speaker Builder magazine.
I was going to say Zalitron.
Yeah. and that's who literally Kimon started referring me to. When I found it and I called him, and he knows this story, I swear to God, I thought it was a janitor. When I talked to him, I thought, oh shit. Because his English.
So Orca Design, how was that originated? What did they distribute at that point?
Let's see. Back then, Kimon had Focal, Cabas, Tecton, which was an unbelievable subwoofer from hell. He had the capacitors and resistors, because he was bringing capacitors in from France, and I cannot remember the name. I'm going to save my life. I should be shot.
So how did you meet him? How did that relationship start?
Over the phone that day. When I was doing the research and found it, I called him and we started talking, and I got across what I needed, and he got across how much money he needed, and I thought, oh my God, okay, I used Kenny's money, it wasn't mine. And 4 days later, this box comes in typical Orca fashion. It's overpacked. You could beat it with a baseball bat and wouldn't hurt it. And we opened it up, and there's this 7-inch yellow cone dual voice coil mid bass driver. What in the hell is this? And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And we go through the box some more, and here comes this, 3.5-pound tweeter. What in the hell? I opened it up and I said, that's just, oh, look at this. That's really cool. That's an inverted dome. What in God's, okay, here, Kenny, go put this in the board. What? And oh yeah, look at this homemade crossover that weighs 6 pounds. Here, go put this in the board. What am I doing with it? I don't care. Oh yeah, 1 cubic foot seal. Go build the boxes and put them on the board. So like an hour and a half later, we actually literally screw them onto the soundboard. And we had, at that time, we had picked up SoundStream. So we hooked up a Class A SoundStream amplifier going through the top of the line Kenwood deck. And believe it or not, Kenwood had a unit that had a digital coax output on it. Yeah, I bought one.
Trying to think what year this is. That's got to be 90.
Yep, 90, and yeah, it was 90. And what was really cool about it was SoundStream had an external 20-bit DAC that had a digital coaxial input, but it had analog out. But so we were using that, and we hooked this thing up, and it killed everything on that board. It wasn't even close. It was like, okay, so that's what it's supposed to sound like. Call this guy, get him down here. And so he did. He came down from work. He worked at one of the refineries, came down, he listened to it, and he said, that's what I want. Do they build subs? I'm sure they do. Let me find out. And you probably don't want to know the price because this ain't cheap right here. I can tell you that. It wasn't. And literally, that's how this whole shebang got started. We started ordering, I guess, about $500 a week, from him. And back in 90, that was, these drivers were not uber expensive, but compared to everybody else's shit, they were.
Oh yeah,
where
substantially more than any car audio driver.
Oh yeah, I mean, this stuff was, these mid bass drivers were $200 a piece, and everybody's like, whatever. But people would hear it and they're just like, oh my God. I mean, to the point where we dropped ADS. There was no point because we weren't selling it anymore. And oh yeah, and we started building car after car after car after car, and we started winning every stinking thing we went to. And then we got Del Fontenot involved with it heavy because Dale Fontenot worked offshore. I asked a world champion, expert class, knows his shit, taught me a hell of a lot, but he also had his own car audio store along with working offshore. So he was jack of all trades. And he knew about Focal, but he just didn't do anything with it. It just didn't dawn on him. And when we started putting forces together and brought Dale into it, and then Kimon was beginning to realize that there was something to this car audio stuff. And Focal all of a sudden shows up with car audio kits a few years after we started this, which they didn't tell anybody. I found out about it accidentally. We got a shipment in from France because we had to have these 8-inch drivers, and we got them straight from France. And in them is flyers, little pamphlets, and it's full of kits that are built for car audio. And I'm like, oh, wait, what? That's a car audio. That's a subwoofer. Oh, shit. And so I'm on the phone with Kimon, and I said, hey, why didn't you tell me about this? He goes, they don't make car audio. Really? I'm going to fax this to you right now. I unfold it, and he was like, lying sacks of shit. Yeah. So, yeah. And that's when, just within a few months after that, I became what he called his super rep and started talking to people in Texas. And literally got it going. Got Matt Bogart and the guys at Audio Designs in Houston to pick it up. And then all of a sudden, some folks in Dallas got it. And then somebody, little jackass named Gary Biggs, found out about it. And then here we go. And
That's funny. My whole career in car audio, I think every place other than Circuit City has carried Focal. Because I used to work at Tweeter.
yeah,
I don't know if you remember Tweeter.
I used to work for Twitter.
Oh, did you really?
Yep, sure did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was the last place I worked. Actually, the last place I worked before I went to work for Kimon officially, quote
The
unquote.
way that I explained Tweeter to Gary when I was talking about my background was literally like the 40-year-old virgin, the movie,
Yeah,
that electronics store that
yeah,
that he worked at, where everyone there was just like kind of like a drunk or burnout, but like had a
yeah,
huge passion for audio.
yeah.
That's exactly how my Tweeter was, at least.
That was mine too.
It was pretty funny.
I
But
actually was really good friend of mine, Larry Tribell, who bought Autographics from Mark when he sold it. He went to work for Tweeter, and he was working in Houston. And after Hurricane Ike decided to take away my mom and dad's grocery store, I needed something to do, and Larry knew what I had been doing, and they needed somebody to go into the Sugarland store in Houston and help them with audio sales. They were doing great in video, but their audio was terrible. So I got hired, went over there, and you guys aren't gonna believe. I walked into the store and I looked around and I thought I was at the old folks' home. I'm going, you guys probably grew up in 2-channel audio. What the hell happened? Because I walk in and the car audio guys, which I was like, those are really, and they recognized me. And they're like, what in God's name are you doing here? I said, I came to work here. I said, guess what? I get to sell the whole floor. I get to sell 12 volt. I get to sell home audio. And they're like, you what? You're here to work with it? Yeah. Oh, the car audio guys were ecstatic. These old farts over here going, why are you here? And what are you doing? And I'm like, guys, you guys have Krell and Focal. What? And there's Denon and Yamaha in here. Are you kidding me? And we got clips. Are you kidding me? And you guys can't sell audio. What is going on? And then I found out they didn't give a shit. Oh no, it was about TV, because that whole bunch came from Circuit City. No offense, Matt.
Hey, I also am an
we
ex-road
found out-
shop employee.
Yep.
Oh my God. And I
Yeah.
going like, man,
Yeah.
we're sitting here selling Sonys and we're selling Samsungs, and we had, my God, we had Zenith plasma televisions, which was the best looking TV I've ever seen. And I'm going, these are $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and you can't sell a $1,200 audio system. Get out of here. And that's where I made, my biggest sale, ever. I sold a $186,000 home audio system.
Wow.
Yeah, to a gentleman who was probably 84, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he was about 4'11" and weighed about $105. And he walked into the store, had 3 CDs in his hands, and I went, I know what you are. I knew exactly what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just took him straight into the high-end room, did my top-down sales. And, we had Krell's entry-level stuff, which was still really freaking good. And we had profile speakers from Focal, which were really good, up to about $6,000 a pair. And he had 3 CDs, and one of them was his wife playing piano with the Houston Symphony Orchestra. And he's listening to her, and he goes, I'll never forget it. He goes, this is really nice. Is there anything that Focal builds that sounds live? I went, yep. there is. I said, if you're willing to go there, I can get them. What are they? So I, pulled a brochure out and showed him. He goes, how much are they? I said, they're $89,000 a pair. It was, it's the original Grand Utopias. And he's like, how big a room or how small a room? I said, it doesn't matter. I said, it doesn't matter. They'll work in a small room. They'll work in a large room. Can you put the system together? Sure. Not a problem. Yeah. When it was all said and done, 186 something. And my boss is looking at me like, you spent 2 hours with this old geezer and you put this whole system together and nothing's going to come of this and blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him and I said, how would you like to pay for this? I said, it'll all be here Friday as soon as, you pay for it. And so we do it. He goes, oh, yes. He opens his wallet up, pulls out a black American Express card. I went, first one I've ever seen. I went, this is going through, buddy boy. Cha-ching. I just looked at my boss and said, I am taking the rest of the day off. I just made $18,600. Kiss my ass. Yeah. Yeah, that was really cool. But that was, that's the biggest system I've ever sold. Back in the 90s, with it's like people like to call it the heyday of car audio. It may have been as far as sales were concerned, but it was so difficult and hard to make things sound good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Is that because it was really hard then, or because it's so much easier now? I'm belittling what Matt and I do on
No,
the way.
It was so hard because number one, we were learning, but two, driver technology just wasn't there. Amplifier technology was, as far as Class A B was concerned, Class A, there were small enough amplifiers being built to where even if you had a small Honda, Robert Zeff's amps were small, the original Zapcos, the small sound streams, the Rock, Punch 45, Punch 100, they weren't that big. The Autotex, they weren't that big, they sounded good, they made decent power. As far as just making things sound good, but we didn't have, the sound treatments. We really,
I mean, I feel like that's the biggest discrepancy is because
it is.
anything home audio related was in a very, very solid enclosure. You're sitting in a predictable location where you can literally center yourself with the speakers.
Yep.
I mean, all the things that we have to eliminate from a car in today is already happening from the start with even the most entry level type of system, right?
Absolutely.
So in a car, I mean, today there's a lot that has to happen in order to negate the whole atmosphere of the car. So obviously we can get closer and closer to high-end home audio in today's world. But back then, I mean, the discrepancy was so large that you just, I would think even the best person doing car audio could never even, for the most part, get close to what even a simple home audio system could be.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't happen until 97, when Alpine, I think it was 97, it may have been 96, when Alpine brought out the 700 and the 701 processors.
Wasn't there I want to say that I remember a precursor to the 700, and that's maybe almost like a 6 series something. That was the first one that I remembered.
Yeah, it had rudimentary DSP in it. It was using the same chip Yamaha was using in their YDSP 1000 home piece. And it did a few things, graphic EQ, a little bit of crossover, and there was a little bit of channel delay, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
And the problem was you had to be liquid to get a real DSP, but because Sony with the Sony ES system that was brought out in the early 90s, that thing could hold its own today. I mean, it was that good. I mean, you could build a 72 dB per octave slope on any channel with that damn thing. It was amazing. And of course, there, with the preamp they had, It was top of the line preamp. It was really good processing. Of course, you had a C90 or C910, transport to go with it. It was amazing. It was just fantastic. And then Clarion brought the ADCS1 processor, which you had to have a truck or some monster. You had to have a Suburban to carry the damn thing. Same thing with Rockford's piece with original symmetry. That thing weighed 179 pounds,
I was
and
gonna
that was
say, Matt, are you too young to know of an original symmetry? Not a
course.
symmetry EPX.
no,
Of
the
course.
original symmetry.
A friend of mine, actually the guy that got me into serious car audio, I don't know that your paths ever would have crossed with him, Nick, but was Kevin Gribben from Irvine Sound and Service, whose Camaro was in Rockford's booth
At
with an
CES.
original at CES with a pair of Blues 12-inch
Yeah.
woofers and two Power 1000s. And this is the one I was telling you, Matt, that had the 5-inch Sony Tube TV in the dash, ripping
Yep.
Top Gun all the time.
Yep.
Kevin's the one that got me into car audio, into serious
That
car audio.
I remember that car because I walked the floor and walked in the booth, and I went, "What is that? What is that? Looks like a computer." And that's
Yep.
exactly what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, up until really and truly up until Pioneer brought the ODR system out. And then things changed. Because at the time, this is when 95 rolls around. And we had already decided that the folks at Autographics, which Mark was no longer there, was going to work for Rockford, but Larry Tribal had purchased it, and Larry was continuing the legacy, and he was an outstanding fabricator. Mark's little brother was still there. Ainsley was there helping, who's brilliant. And, this is where Mickey Bronis was working. Of course, if anybody knows about Mickey's car and what Mickey did, this is where that got started. And we all decided to combine forces. It's like Dale and I were building our cars, and then we decided to bring it to Larry, and then we got Will Adcock and John Pitts involved, and we all formed, this team, because at that particular point in time, Kicker had decided to get involved and had the Kicker competition group, and then MTI had Mark, and and it was like the manufacturers were getting involved in it and throwing some money at it. And the only way that you were going to pull off and beat manufacturers if you could pull talent together. And and that's when everybody started to realize that, if you're going to go win a world's title, you can't do it by yourself anymore, and that's the God's honest truth. You still can't. But it's where we started realizing that processing power was paramount, because if you were going to go win, if you're going to get the car to image and stage correctly, you had to have DSP processing. It was the only way you were going to pull it off.
Right.
And that was with 2-seat. Now, you want to have some fun? If you knew what we had to do to get cars to 2-seat image, oh my God. Oh, the hours that we spent in cars working on that horse shit. Oh my God. But I will tell you this, it taught me so much about phasing and crossover and how things reflect, refract, absorb, path length corrections, how you really need to use the interior of the car to your advantage, understanding quarter wave, half wave. That's where we figured out that a console in the car was a freaking disaster. If you were going to get something to 2-seat, if you had a console, no, we're going to rip it out and rebuild the console, because it caused way too many problems. It still does. But now we got all pass filters. We can fix that shit. Oh God! If I had all pass filters in '95, do you know how many people would have been pissed? But yeah.
So let's fast forward a bit to today's world, and are you still competing, or did you hang it up after you won a couple years ago?
After I got serious about Aggieland, I wanted to win it. That was it. I had made a promise to a few people that I would not do it anymore. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't go tune cars or design systems or, work with Pate as much as I can because Chris is still building cars to go and compete. Um, yeah, as far as me actually building something and go getting back in the lanes, not unless somebody pisses me off.
Word to the wise. Don't piss
Because
me
that
off.
happened last time. That's the reason that I got back in. Somebody who shall remain nameless pissed me off. They made a comment about
They know who they are right now. If they're listening.
I
no,
don't,
they
but
don't.
it's my new goal.
Yeah,
My out.
I don't know, but they know.
They really don't because I don't think they know that I know what they said because this is somebody in the upper Midwest who shall I will not ever remember. They
All
just
right, so geographically, we've eliminated.
yeah, it's somebody in the upper Midwest, and I'll just leave it at that. But they pissed me off, and I went, yeah, guess what? Watch this. Hold my beer. I got this shit. I made it a point that I was like, I am going to take this truck and I'm going to build everything in factory locations and I'm going to prove a point, bitch.
I was that's kind of where I was getting to is that so in the past and back when two seat was the only focus in competition and
Yeah.
you basically had to have speakers and kick panels and you had to have a two seat car. And now with the way the world has changed and all the one seat competition and being able
Mm-hmm.
to use locations like it, you and your truck chose to do factory locations at a very high level, and that's
Yeah.
something that like we face on a daily basis on whether we're fabbing pillars or not or using factory locations or how much work we're doing. You chose to use factory locations. I was curious as to how and why, and I mean obviously you're in a truck and kick panels don't do the greatest in a truck where you're sitting up so high.
No.
And
Um,
between you. But what's the story behind factory
well,
location?
when I when I got the truck, there was a base system in the truck. When I mean base, I mean base. It was a AM FM radio.
Oh gosh. And
Because
just to be clear for the guys that are listening, this is I don't remember if it's a Chevy or a GMC.
2014 Chevy work truck
Okay.
that had been fully customized by the general manager of the Chevrolet dealership at the dealership. It's factory leather, factory. I mean factory. They did a 6-inch lift, wheels, tires, bed liner, undercarriage covers. They sprayed bed liner in the wheel well. I mean, this truck was really nice. And the guy was in a bind and needed to sell it, and he sold it to me what he had. He had like 36 grand in it. It's what he owed. Yeah, this is $70,000 truck. Well, it's terrible. It was awful. I was so happy. And I get the truck, and I'm looking at it. It's an AM FM radio because it used to be just a work truck, a WT, a work truck,
Yep.
which I was really happy about because I'm like, well, then I can do what I want in here. This is way cool. I don't have to worry about interfacing or anything. That piece of shit can come out. But when I was driving the car home, I was listening to it and I'm going, this thing images. Now, it doesn't image perfectly, but this thing images, and I can't tell there's a 6.5-inch or a 6x9 mid bass driver in that door. Everything's whoever designed this engineer knew what he was doing. And I'm like, oh. So I literally tore into the truck as soon as I got home. And I pulled the top of the dash off and I found that 2.5-inch full range driver in each corner. And I found the 6x9s in the doors. And I went, well, this will be really cool because, we had the C3CXs from Illusion Audio, and I knew that can fit there. That's not going to be that big a deal. And a Carbon 8, that will work. And I put the whole thing back together and we got busy and didn't build the system for like a year and a half. Now, this was 2016, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 2016. And I decided I was going to take a week vacation, and decided, you know what? I'm going to build this vehicle to prove a point to our dealers that you can actually use factory locations, really nice speakers, a DSP processor, and you can make this thing work.
Mm-hmm.
And about the time that I decided to do this, the folks at Sony brought out the RSX GS9. And I found out about it, and I called Richard Wong at Sony, and I said, Richard, is this thing really what I think it is? And he goes, yep, it is. I said, I need one. And sure enough, he said, I'll send it to Pate, and you can pick it up at Pate's. So I paid Chris whatever. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't a whole lot of money. I know that. And I got it, and got the GS9. I got an H12 aerospace, a 204s and a 03 Mosconi amplifiers. I put a C3CX in the corner of each dash, and then there was a carbon 8 in each door. And then Chris built me an enclosure and cussed me every step of the way because I told him how I wanted it done. And he was like, what are you putting in this? I said, I'm going to put a little deal in here called a C12XL. And that was that box that he built me was 240 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Because I knew what I wanted.
Yep.
And yeah, like I tell you, he called me every name in the book. He made it work, though. I will give him that. And, at the time, I didn't sound treated like I would because I wasn't going to compete. And I tuned the truck, and I was just, taking around Texas and Louisiana, let people listen to it. And they were like, holy shit, this thing sounds really good. And it did. I got it to image, I got it to stage, I got to do what I wanted to do. And, the following June, if I remember correctly, I was at Pate's at Aggieland. This was 2017. And he listened to it and he goes, you know what you ought to do? I said, what? You ought to throw this thing in the lanes. I said, what the hell for? He says, just to go show people what can be done. Shit, fine. I was okay. So I kind of tuned on it a little bit, paid the money and entered, and shit, I was third without trying. And the only person that beat me was Steve Ebb because Steve brought two cars, and he brought that Blazer of his, which is amazing. And he also had, his truck. And there he was first and second, and I was third. And I was like, wow, that ought to prove a point right there. Thank you very much. And then somebody made a remark about bias judging, and that piece of shit truck has no business being there, and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, okay, pissed me off. Just keep going. And then about 3 months after that, Chris was talking to me about the next Aggieland was going to be the last one because he was just getting too busy and he was thinking about logistics wise. It was just going to take too much. And he thought this was going to be it. And I was like, so if this is going to be the last one you're going to do, and somebody has really just gotten underneath my skin, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this one more time. So I tore it down and put 542 pounds of deadening material in the vehicle. I weighed it. I wanted to make sure. I built the baffles for the carbon 8s the way I wanted to, and I didn't like them. I kept thinking they're not doing. There's. I'm not saying it doesn't sound great, but the way it didn't work in the truck the way I wanted it to. The C3CXs I absolutely loved and still do.
All right, Nick, listen, I'm going to cut you off right there.
All right.
I've been the last 5 jobs that I've sold, they've all been C8 with C3CX.
Okay.
Tell me why I should sell something different.
It's not. This is
because I feel like I've been in a box. No. I feel like I've been selling the same crap. But at the end of the day,
it works.
It works. And it works. Beautiful.
It is. I'm not saying it's not.
I wish you were able to hear the Tesla Model 3 that I
No,
just finished,
I
because that is literally the perfect car to throw in an Orca booth and be like, this is your, again, it's not like Utopia M,
no.
but it's like your mid-tier system, and it will literally shit on every single other
Mhm.
car in this place.
I don't doubt it. But to me, in that car, in that vehicle, because of the acoustics, there were frequencies that I was like, there's not enough weight in stringed instruments. And so I was like, so this is going to change. So I pulled the C12XL out and I got a Raven 12, and that changed my mind. It was like,
Yeah.
well, okay, never mind.
Hold on. So let's get into this real quick. I
Okay.
want you to give me the background of Orca acquiring the rights to Illusion and then redesigning Illusion, because you guys did redesign
Yeah.
the Illusion.
Yeah.
And then also I want you to give me a background real quick on the Raven stuff, because again, it you can draw a lot of like close equivalents to Illusion.
Yes.
So I just want you to kind of touch on all that stuff.
Um, okay. Well, part of Orca Design being Orca Design is designing home audio equipment, mainly drivers, mainly the ribbon tweeters for the Raven ribbon tweeters.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's also a number of other things, subwoofers, there's mid ranges, there's consultation that Alan does with various different home audio manufacturers. We still work with Wilson Audio. That was something that Orca's done since the very beginning, when Kimon and Dave Wilson worked together to build the Wilson Audio Tiny Top, the Watt. That was David
Mm-hmm.
Wilson buying stuff from Kimon. Um, that's kind of where the Orca design and manufacturing, that's what it was, and still is, not just a distributorship. And uh, when we got the rights to Illusion Audio, it was just basically uh, we discovered that in India there was a company over there that Alan and Kimon were doing some work with that had the rights. They had Illusion Audio speakers there, and it turns out that the engineers, the two guys in Arizona that had Illusion Audio, that built the very first ones, they were being built in India at this factory because the factory belonged to their uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And when it went under business, when it went out of business, it just sat there. It sat literally on a shelf, and we had an opportunity to actually get our hands on it, take a look at it, realize that, you know what, this is an answer to an awful lot of problems,
Mm-hmm.
because at
Which
the time,
I'll stop you right there, and just for the people listening, Illusion Audio, their speakers, I guess I would say the patent with the speaker is that the magnet is actually front mounted, right? So the the depth of the back of the driver is very, very shallow. So it opens up a lot of new possibilities with how the speaker can be installed, right?
exactly.
So, for the people that are unfamiliar listening right now with Illusion Audio, if you were to Google the speaker right now, you'd see that the magnet is mounted in the front, which again brings open a whole new amount of possibilities with mounting like an 8 in the door of a modern car. And we all know that like the window track is going to be in a lot of cars fairly close to kind of where the mounting point is. So the Illusion 8 in most modern cars is literally a great application for almost everything that's out there.
Yeah, and the front mount driver's been around for a very, very long time, which I didn't, but we, because of the research that had to be done with some of the things that we were thinking about doing. Um, it's been around a while, but not at the level that Kimon and Alan, with some help, designed these new speakers, because they took the initial design, which was the inverted magnet, And they
Mhm.
took it and they said, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at all the modern day technology. This is, mid to the late 90s is when Illusion was first brought out, and do a complete redesign and use all the modern day technology that we could get our hands on to redesign the speakers. And it's amazing what they came up with. And um, the technology is substantial and it solves a lot of problems as far as mounting depth and having the amount of X max that we're all looking for, the amount of
Mhm.
throw that the speaker has. And so, Illusion started that way. And, when we built the C12XL and the C10XLs, which were extra long throw subwoofers, but they had a tremendous amount of low distortion numbers, which was
Mhm.
kind of one of the things we were after. Um, and when we did that, there was some home audio manufacturers who learned about them, and in one of them in particular, got a chance to listen to them and was amazed by the low amount of distortion that he was hearing out of
Mhm.
them. But he needed something that didn't require the amount of power these things do, and he wanted them to have maybe a little more throw to them, but also have more efficiency. So Alan redesigned the C12XL and built what was known as a Raven XL, a 10 and a 12. And it's because of a company in Nashville, in Tennessee. I think it's Nashville. It might be Memphis, but I think it's Nashville. There's a company there that builds it's a ribbon speaker. We build a 7 foot tall ribbon tweeter mid range.
Jeez.
It's for his line array. It's ridiculous. It's basically 40,000 hertz to 500 hertz on this ribbon. It's unbelievable. You sit there and you listen to it and you go, oh, good Lord, listen to this. It's the closest thing to live that I've heard. If you know what a line array can do, then you understand. And for those of you who don't, a line array will give you at one spot. It's like we have a timeline every freaking thing to the nth degree, and wherever you're sitting, and wherever you're sitting, and it's what these things do. When you're sitting there, you listen to a line array, the room disappears. There's no speakers, and you're just enveloped into the music. It's incredible. This guy takes a 7 foot ribbon. He has 24 4-inch custom built scan speak mid ranges.
Jeez.
And
Mhm.
each one of those 24 drivers is in, I think it's like 0.4 cubic feet milled billet aluminum tapered enclosures
My
for
God.
each one. Now,
And
originally he had an 18 that was built by Eminence. I believe it was Eminence. That was in like 4 cubic feet sealed. But when he heard the C12XLs and Alan built the new Ravens for him, what he did then is he took 3 of them and put each one in 2 cubic feet sealed billet aluminum enclosures. And there's 3 of them, and there's 1,000 watts driving each one of them.
I can only imagine.
And I'm going to tell you what, I've heard the Grand Utopia EMs more times,
Mhm.
and they are absolutely stunning. When they're done right, there's not much that compares to them.
Gary, have you ever done the Ravens?
I have not. In fact, I just did a 10XL in a car last week, and
Okay, so
I
you know
probably
how good the
I should have
Carbon
put the
Illusion
Raven in there.
XL sound, right?
Yeah, what's the deal with voice coil configuration? I think that's what's killed it for me every time I've gone to use it, is that it's a single 4 ohm
The
coil. Is that
Ravens are single 4 ohms. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I just every time I've had an application for it. I think it was a single woofer setup where I didn't have an amp that could make power for it. So I
And
skipped it.
that's the thing. The beauty of the Raven is 600 watts, knock yourself out. That's all it needs. If
Hmm.
you got 1,000, okay, fine, you got headroom.
Yeah, I mean it's got it's
But
got a lot of
and it will go
in
there.
between.
I mean, because I will tell you, Sonny puts 1,000 watts on each driver. The last time I got a chance to listen to him, we had to help him set up a room at CES. This has been a few years back. And we went over there on a Thursday evening at like 9 o'clock at night. I think Alan and I worked till like 4 o'clock in the morning on it with him. And it was all tubes. I'm talking, I don't know where he found 1,000-watt tube amplifiers.
Oh gosh. I was just gonna say, is the whole system running off 5 watts or
No, he had these monster tube amplifiers for the subs, and then he had single-ended triodes for the ribbons, and then he had, if I remember correctly, it was like 150 watts worth of tubes for the mid ranges.
So
And
you haven't told me what a set of those speakers costs, by the way.
100 and I think they're $1.85 for the pair.
I was just gonna say each or a pair. I was expecting to hear they were 3+. That's
they're
a lot of aluminum.
Oh, but you order them from him. He doesn't have a dealer. You order them, he builds them, he'll come and set them up at your house. It's just, I've never heard anything like it. And he measured the distortion on the Raven sub and called us and said it's lower than amplifiers at 75% of input power.
Wow.
It's unreal. I other than the Raven, other than the Focal electromagnet sub that's in the Grand Utopia EMs, I've never heard anything like it.
The Raven subs are absolutely sick. Nick, you were able to hear the Escalade that we did, which had 3 10s.
Yeah.
And with that vehicle, we were lucky because the build was kind of like a no budget scenario, and it was make it sound the best you can, make it look the coolest that you can. So we were able to do like a ton of sound treatment. And that's a scenario in which, with most clients, I always say that every car is going to have its natural point of resonance, which is really going to limit the equipment output, right? Because you're always limiting the output due to the car's resonance.
Sure.
And in this case, this Escalade, we could really maximize 2 8s in the doors, 2 8-inch Utopia M in the door. We could maximize 3 Raven 10.
Yep.
And there was very little to no resonance, period.
No.
And the end result of that is you're sitting in the driver's seat and you're looking forward, and what you're hearing in some of the music that you're listening to, you would think that the dash should be literally ripping in half with like physics based on your ears. You would think that the dash should be ripping based on how you're hearing the audio in the driver's seat.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I mean, it's just
I told you.
I feel like that car was so different, and I'm so pissed that COVID happened in 2020 because that car, what you said to the client, because you actually went to his house and listened to it, you told him like you should compete at Aggie Land because you might fucking win it all.
No, he would have.
Yeah, so it sucks because like we didn't get that opportunity, but at the end of the day, the car, for me personally, listening to it versus all the other cars I've ever done, it just sounded so different. And I don't know if it's, I was just talking to a client about this the other day because he was kind of asking questions about it. I don't know if it's because we really maximized the equipment because there was no, true resonance inside the car, and that's why it sounded so much better.
Yeah.
Or if we had the double mid bass in the front door and the amount of, pressure and everything that you were feeling in the front of that car was just like you were at, Hard Rock JBL Center in Vegas listening to a concert.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was just so hard to kind of equate that to other car audio systems that I've heard, because that car literally sounded like if you heard a kick drum, it sounded like it was literally ripping the dash out of the car.
I told you, it's one of the 3 best vehicles I've ever heard in my life. And that is no shit.
What's better? What's better, Nick?
I can't say what's better.
What else makes the top 3?
Mark's 4Runner and Dale Fontenot's Thunderbird.
Okay.
And then and it's just different. There's different presentations. When Mark's 4Runner was on, it was on. It would scare the hell out of you. And that's because of all the crap that Mark had going on in there.
You're talking about the days of when I think it was still kicker in there and it had the scans in the floor and.
Oh, this is when he had a yellow cone speaker in the kick panel, who shall remain nameless. And he had the custom built horns, which weren't playing. And the center channel and the tweeters up in the I can go on. Mark will give me shit for this. And he had the lexicon processor in the car that Mickey Bronis found accidentally, that he didn't tell anybody about. I mean, I can go on, but it was truly amazing. When it was on, it was amazing. And then, when Dale's Thunderbird was the last iteration of it, with, when he had all the Mac amps in there with the tube amps and the 4 5.25-inch subwoofers in each door with the 13-inch sub in the dash and the brilliant tweeters. And that thing would make you, it's the only car I have ever seen judges get out of crying. Literally watching 2 judges who I know, who both, one of them's a trained classical, I almost want to say, yeah, she teaches opera. And then here's first chair trumpet, Dallas Symphony Orchestra. And this is when judging was dead damn serious. It's not this people today. No offense to anybody listening who's an IASCA judge and you're friends of mine, but you ain't James and you ain't Penny, and y'all know that. They get out of Fontenot's car crying. Now that's how emotional that car was. And it can make you do that. And then there's this thing Matt built. And I'm excluding Pate's Civic because that's just a whole
cheating.
different
That's cheating.
That's cheating, and you know it is, Chris, so piss off.
Yeah, so the cool thing I love about the Escalade was because it was a very practical installation.
Yeah.
It was mainly OEM locations. Obviously, we moved the mid-range around a little bit. We moved the tweeters slightly, but obviously we chose factory locations with like the mid-bass in the door, obviously your subs in the back. But I mean, it was a very practical installation because you could still use the car for a car, rather than it being totally set up for something for sound quality.
Yeah, I mean, you can drive this car every day.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it, brother. You built this thing so damn solid, and you can drive this thing because this guy, after talking with him, he drives this thing every damn day. He is proud as shit, which he should be. It's solid. And anybody, and I have told this more than once, and I'm going to say it on your guys' show. Anybody that thinks that all the attack and the drive and the power comes from your mid-bass drivers, you're full of shit. No, it doesn't. It comes from the combination of your subs and your mid-bass drivers working together. And if they are not in phase with each other at the crossover point,
right. And that's the big thing that I really tell a lot of clients over the phone, because obviously most of the systems I sell is really over the phone. And at the end of the day, I feel like you have your mid-range speakers, which is the most important speaker in the car, right? Kind of what you just alluded to, which most people think, right? So once your mid-bass is perfectly in phase with your mid-range, and if your mid-range is kind of locating on the dashboard, your mid-bass is going to locate on the dashboard, right?
Absolutely.
And if your sub-bass is perfectly in phase with your front mid-bass, now guess what? Your sub-bass is going to sound like it's right on the top of your dashboard.
Yep.
And
get better.
The cool thing about with that Escalade is that the front mid-bass of that car was just, I mean, it was so intrusive And it was just so captivating. There was so much sound coming out of that front that when you heard it, it sounded like it was ripping the dashboard in half.
Yeah.
And then when you coupled that with 3 Raven 10s,
Oh.
all on their own, all on their own amplifier, and it's perfectly in phase with the front mid bass. Like when you heard a kick drum, it sounded like it was just like ripping the front of the car in half.
Yeah. It's the closest thing I've heard to a real kick drum.
Yeah.
And it
was crazy.
I used to play, excuse me, before the arthritis in my left knee got so damn bad. I mean, I used to play drums. And it's the closest thing to a kick drum I've ever heard. That's home audio, car audio. I don't care.
I've said to Gary in the past, like, I feel like with car audio, I feel like us as installers have a huge opportunity to really wow people. And a lot of it is really based on the mental and the physics of the human brain. And by that, I mean, when the owner of the car is sitting in the driver's seat and he knows that there's 3 subs behind him, he knows that he's listening to a combination of, 8 different speakers in the front and back of the car. And at the end of the day, all of that kind of is eliminated, and you hear a main sound stage in front of you that really is accurate in representation.
Yeah.
The outcome of that is almost way more impressive than the physical aspect of seeing 2-channel home audio in front of you in a room, right? Because you're seeing that, and you're almost like mentally and subliminally standing in between the speakers. So I think your expectation is that you're going to have that phantom image, right? Whereas in a car, it's much more difficult because you're staring at the pillars on the left and the right side, and you know that there's a speaker there, and you know that there's speakers in the doors, and the subs are in the back of the car. But when you're experiencing the music, it's all sounding like one speaker in the center of the dashboard that's as wide as the car and is almost as deep as the car, right? And it's like a David Blaine magic trick. He shows you the magic trick, and then you're just like, what the fuck? Like, how's it even possible? Like, how am I perceiving the image to be where I'm hearing it? How do I perceive the subs to be in the front of the car and not in the back of the car?
And this, kids, is why you buy a DSP.
Exactly. Exactly. This is DSP 101 here. And like I said, when you're hearing the sub bass in the front and all that kind of stuff, you're not expecting it. And that is really what is giving the additional support to a car audio system. And I tell high-end home audio people all the time, my personal preference, and listen, I was lucky enough to hear the Grand Utopias in France, in America, playing a little bit more dynamic than they were in France, which was great, by the way. I feel like in America, in a room that wasn't fit for the speakers or wasn't designed for the speakers, playing more dynamic, it was more fun because we're Americans and we like more dynamic music. But at the end of the day, when you're listening to these high-end car audio systems, there's way more sound pressure in the vehicle, right? There's way more going on. And it's hard to make the comparison from listening to the same thing in an open room to a small space in a car, to where you almost feel like you're right in the middle of the music. And for me, one of the funnest venues that I've ever heard live music in is the JBL Center at the Hard Rock in Vegas, to where it's just like, I mean, when you're hearing the bass and when you're hearing the kick drum, I mean, it's like smashing you in the chest. And I feel like on great car systems, that's exactly what you're getting, right? With the same type of sound stage, with the same width, the same depth, all that kind of stuff. It's just way easier to recreate a live concert in an average car than it is a system sitting in a home in a bigger room,
Oh,
in a
yeah.
bigger open room.
I couldn't agree with you more because, I mean, let's face it. If you're in a very small confined area, which we are in an automobile,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's a whole lot easier to pressurize it and to bring it to concert levels. I mean, it really is.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because if you stop, like the room I'm sitting in right now, I'm sitting here in my theater room. That's 13 and a half feet wide and it's 21 and a half feet deep. In order for me to get this to like a buck 20, do you know
Yeah.
how many speakers and power I have to pull
Yep.
that off?
A ton. Yep.
No, I mean, you're looking at $100,000 worth of gear. Now, in an automobile, you don't have to get to a buck 20. You get to a buck 5, maybe even 108. It feels like 130 because you're in a very small confined area. Now, I'm not talking about sub bass. Now, I'm talking about full range, concert level. We're going to listen to, as the saying goes, if it's too loud, you're too damn old, you're going to a Kiss concert. Then you've done something. And
Yeah,
it's
I
a
mean,
whole lot easier.
there's still the benefit of controlling reflections and seating positions a little easier in a
Sure.
room, but
Absolutely.
yeah, but I again, you don't get that chance. Like how we started this whole conversation was you rocking out in your car for the first time and wanting to crank it up and having that environment where you can do that. And that's where the car is king.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think as long as we have we have an automobile and we can do what we need to do with it, that's going to be one of the goals. Is we're going to have to be able to rock out regardless of your music and your taste. I don't care what it is. It's got to get to concert level. Now, are we going to leave it at concert level? Hell no.
Well,
But no.
Crank it up and pull the knob off.
And yeah, there you go. And we're going to go to 11 and that's that. But oh God help us all.
So at some point we were talking about your truck.
Yeah.
We were talking about how you had some C8s in the door, and then you made a change, and you didn't like the baffle. And I still haven't heard what it was about the baffle you didn't like specifically.
The baffle was I had built a 1.5 inch, a 1 inch baffle, and the carbonate was in it. And I was like, okay, so the resonance is here. I can hear it. It's driving me up the wall. And so I did what we used to do back in the day, and I built the 3.5 inch baffle. That's how thick it was. And that's when I coated it with fiberglass rosin and a little bit of sand and a little bit of lead shot and mixed it all together.
Wow.
And encased it in it and then wrapped it in Focal Bam and then Focal Bam the whole door and then 24 black hole tiles in each door. And then I had 3 layers of Bam and black hole aluminum crap that stuck to everything it touches, dear God.
Supposed to do, right?
Yeah, and to and somebody when I won, somebody asked, and I remember there were 3 or 4 people wanted me to describe why and how it, what I did to get there, and I told them it was a sound treatment, and they're like, "You're full of shit." I said, "No, it's not," and what a lot of people don't understand is if you don't control the resonance of a door, you are for me, from 350 to 400 hertz to 80 hertz is probably as low as I'm going to play any driver today, with maybe the exception of the 8WM because of the amount of throw that thing has, a large voice coil. I am a big fan of limiting what is known as intermodulation distortion in a speaker, because the lower a mid-bass driver plays, the higher the intermodulation distortion is going to happen, because that voice coil is not designed to handle those kind of frequencies with that kind of power. I don't give a damn who builds it. Sorry, this is my own personal belief. So I was going to limit the excursion of whatever the driver was. And at that particular point in time, I'm listening to the door. I'm not, the door is the enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to make the enclosure like my home enclosures are. And so what I ended up doing was I had I had 24 tile in each door. Then I had Focal band on the, on the skin of the door. And then there's the door card. And that's the biggest POS, that I had to worry about because it's plastic and it's flimsy and there's things on it that rattle. And I'm going, dear God, this is driving me up my wall. So I knew from talking with a friend of mine that has a PhD in acoustics that if you can limit any resonance to the point to where you get it to there's only one frequency you got to worry about, you can eliminate that frequency with a notch filter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what I ended up doing was I had various different types of sound treatment, whether it was BAM or was black hole or even some good old fashioned Dynamat, which I had. I filled the door with foam and various different types of treatment. And then I got a stethoscope out, put the stethoscope in my ears and put the probe on the door and I started tapping it with a hammer. And I tapped it. And when I heard a different frequency, when I tapped, I would apply treatment and to where it started matching timbre across the board. Yeah, that took me a day for each plastic door panel. But then I got one frequency and I knew that, okay, I know what this is. I just have to put the door panel back on the door and see what it is and build a notch filter and kill it, which is what I did. And people have to understand this is what you have to do at the level we were at in order to win.
Yeah, and for those listening, that's why kick panels were so sought after because they're
Exactly.
generally in the best part of the car, right? Because you
Exactly.
don't have to worry about plastic, you don't have to worry about this big open space. It's a very solid area of the car in order to put a speaker.
Well,
So when we're talking about door panels, there's a lot that has to happen that can really control the resonance of the entire door panel where plastic meets plastic and
Exactly.
all that other stuff. So
yeah, the other side too is when you're doing a kick panel, it's relatively simple to build a small sealed enclosure,
Mhm.
right? And then the trick, from the old school days was to vent them to the outside of the car with a mat, and that helps compared to trying to build an enclosure in a door. I actually had a car where one of my personal cars, you were talking about not playing drivers too low. I had a set of F1 status 5.25 and ported enclosures in the doors of
Oh,
one of
Lord.
my cars. And we let
Yeah.
them play all the way down to 40 hertz
40
and
hertz.
it was fun.
Yep.
It was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Nick, real quick, can you talk about, I guess, speaker manufacturers? Because you do a lot on the technical side, so you know a lot of the technical details of how speakers are built nowadays, especially what you guys carry. Um, can you talk about how speakers are designed to basically work in a car, like the 8-inch Utopia M, right? It's meant to be in an enclosure that is like a door cavity, right? Like a
Yes.
1 cubic foot
Yeah.
enclosure. Also, there's a lot of different off-axis response, like with the tweeters, because they know that more times than not, the tweeter's going to be in a pillar or in a factory location,
Mhm.
which is generally going to have an off-axis response. So I think that is very important for maybe some of the consumers listening to understand how speakers are kind of designed and manufactured for modern cars.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways that you can control quote unquote dispersion patterns, unquote. But when you're talking about the standard piston driver, like a 6.5 or a 5.25, 4-inch, 3.5, there's some physics involved, and it's known as the beam patterns of a speaker. Unless you have Focal's M profile, okay, which is the anomaly, A 6.5-inch driver is going to be omnidirectional to a certain point as far as frequency is concerned. Then, once it passes a certain frequency, and most 6.5-inch drivers, that's somewhere between 2000 and about 2500, 2600 hertz. Then it becomes less omnidirectional, and it becomes to start to narrow down to the point where it's going to what is known as beam.
Mm-hmm.
That means it's going to fire like a laser almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to aim at you. It's going to shoot directly off of it. So in home audio and in car, for that matter of fact, one of the things you want to make sure about is if you're going to put a driver in the door, let's say, okay, and 95% of the time we're going to put a two-way in the car. There's going to be a tweeter on the A-pillar at the top of the door or the top of the dash, and the 6.5 is going to be somewhere in the bottom of the door or 5.25. Okay, well, that's a hell of a big difference as far as path length is concerned between the two speakers. Okay. A lot of times it's 30 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So manufacturers have to stop and think, okay, so if I have a 6.5-inch bass driver and it's going to start to beam at 2500 hertz, okay, that means it doesn't radiate energy in a 360-degree pattern. It starts to narrow down. The tweeter is going to have a omnidirectional from 2500 hertz to probably somewhere around the 8000 hertz mark. Then it's going to start to beam. So we've got a radiation pattern of a tweeter that's omnidirectional at the crossover point. Okay. So that means all this energy is radiating in a predictable pattern. The 6.5 is at that point is going to start to struggle to do that. So in home audio, that's real easy to overcome because the 6.5 and the tweeter are usually within 2 inches or 3 inches of each other because whatever the cost.
And pointed at you.
Yeah, and you can aim it at you, even though they're omnidirectional because they phase together. That's the beauty of it. You know, that's the reason why the kick panel speakers will work so well because you could put a tweeter in 6.5 or 5.25 or even a 4 and they'd be right next to each other and it would phase so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're designing speakers for a car, and like what Focal does and a lot of other manufacturers do, you have to take into account the omnidirectional ability of each speaker and also the beam patterns, which means that you've got to design a passive network to compensate for some of these problems. So what happens is if, let's say, the 6.5 is in the bottom of the door and the tweeter's in the A-pillar, we have this huge gap between the two of them, and there's going to be a phase shift. And it happens because, quite frankly, they don't work well together because the way that the radiation patterns of this energy off of the drivers are completely different. So the way a lot of people get around it is the 6.5 plays full range and the tweeter plays as low as it possibly can. And it sounds better. Sounds way better. Is it perfect? No. That's the reason why you see a three-way showing up in more and more cars, because the 3.5 or the 4 or the 2.5 compensates for the difference as far as radiation patterns off of the speakers. Because the 3.5 or the 4 doesn't start to beam until around 4,000 or 5,000 hertz. So if you've got a 3.5 in a tweeter in the A pillar or the top of the dash, they're going to work extremely well together because you can put them next to each other and they phase better.
Mm-hmm.
3.5 plays omnidirectional from 4,000 hertz all the way down to whatever the crossover point is between the mid-bass driver and the mid-range. And guess what? They're going to phase better. That's the reason why so many people like three-ways, because they sound better, and it's because of physics. You've also got a lot of manufacturers who are building these wide-band, full-range 2.5 and 3.5-inch speakers. The reason behind that is, number one, if you're going to put them in the A-pillar and you're going to do a custom job, okay, you've got a speaker that basically there's no tweeter. It plays full range, plays out to 10,000 hertz. So there's no phase shift whatsoever between the tweeter and the mid-range. And that means it's going to be able to phase better between the mid-bass driver and the mid-range itself. And let's face it, if it's a DSP, it's really easy to tune. The problem with most full-range drivers is they don't play much above 10,000 hertz.
And struggle with output.
And struggle with output because they have no X-Max. Now, that's what most manufacturers have to overcome when it comes to upper-level speakers. Coaxials or, that's a different story because that's typically, quote unquote, a full-range driver. But there's inherent problems with coaxials unless you build a coincident driver, because the tweeter normally is mounted on some type of device, let's just say board. It's a bridge. It's got something that the tweeter's mounted to, and the phase alignment between the driver and the 6.5, the 5.25, the 4, and the tweeter is off because the tweeter's already ahead of the mid-range physically. And so that's the reason a lot of coaxials sound bright. And they sometimes like, that sounds terrible. That's because the phasing is incorrect. That's the reason why in Illusion Audio, we have so many drivers who happen, they're coincident where the voice coil, the tweeter is aligned to the voice coil of the mid-range and they're phased correctly at the crossover point. And again, it all comes back to phasing. The car audio environment, as many of you already know, but some of you may not, it is the hardest environment in the entire world to make something sound good because we have so many surfaces that reflect, refract, absorb. It's a disaster.
Which brings the best opportunity for a shop who knows what they're doing to really give the return on the investment for the client.
Precisely. So if you have really a high quality product that is designed by a manufacturer who understands the acoustics of the vehicle and has the engineering prowess to back it up and can design things with predictability in an automobile because they have the resources to actually build it in an automobile and test it in an automobile, you're going to be way ahead of the game as far as making your client happy. And it's not going to be so damn difficult for you as the installer to make it sound good because it was designed in the car. And I'm not going to name names, but there's a hell of a lot of manufacturers out there who are taking home audio drivers, building a four-on voice coil, and they're sticking it in the car and saying it's car audio. And they need to go put the crack pipe down. It's not, because if you haven't literally sat in the car and listened and designed the drivers for the doors or for the A-pillars or for the top of the dash or for the back package tray or for the rear door, if they haven't done all this, if they haven't put all those drivers in there and tested them to see about radiation patterns, about does it play low enough, does it play high enough, can it handle the power, can it take DJ Magic bass bastard shit, can it handle the Americans, and the French will tell you that all the time. If they don't do this, then how reliable and predictable is that speaker going to be in a car? It's not going to be.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest issues. And coming from someone who still puts some home audio drivers in cars on a weekly basis over here, there are drivers that are well suited for a car, and there are drivers that absolutely don't work. And one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of what Orca does is that they have one of the highest compliance mid-range drivers out of any car audio brand that will handle power and it will perform. It gives you all the benefits of a home audio driver. I'm talking about when you get into Kevlar, right? Like a Kevlar 6 is super high compliance, super high throw, and it gets all of the best stuff of a home audio driver and it's for a car. And the best part is it has a warranty.
Right.
That's the main reason I hate putting car audio or home audio drivers in a car is there is no warranty, and it's not going to handle the abuse, and it's not going to handle the abusive customer. And I have some abusive customers.
No, whatever. Really? Oh, God.
By some, I meant every single one.
I understand.
Well, it's funny. What one of the big arguments that I always make when different clients ask about different brands and say, "Hey, what do you think about this brand? What do you think about this brand?" And obviously, I'm kind of loyal to what I sell. I sell what I know works. I sell what I know that's not going to fail and what's going to obviously exceed the expectations of the client. And a lot of that has to do, my end argument comes down to like research and development, right? So you have a company like Focal in which they've spared no expense on the home side to engineer and develop the best sounding speaker that they could ever imagine, right? So obviously what they learn from that research and development is going to trickle down to even their most inexpensive speakers.
Yeah.
So when you start making the equivalent to where, and a lot of clients will think that Focal is some just frivolous brand, which is more expensive than any other brand, when realistically, their cheapest lines will compete with, the GLC1, the C2, the C3, the C5, the Alpine Type S, the Type R, things like that, just to kind of like name a few competitive starting points. But it's kind of silly to think that research and development doesn't trickle down to even their most entry level type of speaker. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say a lot of the brands out there, they focus their research and development to one thing, right? And I'm not going to name specific brands, but specific brands develop really nice products in one category. That's kind of like their niche. That's kind of like what they sell, what they're known for. And with Focal, I feel like they have proven to like develop a really good sounding speaker, right? Because they put the money into to theoretically make the best sounding home speaker that they can make, and that will then trickle down to obviously the car side, to every single line of speaker that they make. And I feel like there's a few little sales bits that are like they throw out 0.5 of 1% of perfect from the quality control standpoint, which really gives you the consistency of the product that you receive, right? So, yeah. I mean, in all of my time with dealing with a lot of the product that Orca has, I don't know if I've really had many failures. I don't know if I've ever had one bad, and this is saying one, not even like multiple. I don't know if I've ever had like one bad Mosconi product. I don't know if I've really had one bad Focal speaker. I never find myself, having an RA for a product, because and if it's installed correctly, the product's not going to fail. And anytime that I've ever had a product, I might have had one bad Mosconi processor, and it was completely the fault, I guess, of my own, in the sense that a lot of the modern Mosconi processors, they don't have a lot of high amperage outputs on that, on the
remote out.
Yeah, the remote out, right?
Yeah.
So
low current.
Yeah, so I on a lot of the first couple that I did, I used like a DEI micro relay to increase the amperage of that turn on.
Yeah.
And I had one in particular where the micro relay went bad, and it basically sent 12 volts up that side of the remote output.
Yeah.
And it heated up that DSP, and it eventually smoked the DSP because it's giving a 12 volt input to where the output was. And I guess that processor didn't like it, and it ruined the DSP. So that DSP had to be swapped out. So since then, I've made the adjustment that every single DSP that I do with a relay, I put a diode on that input. So even if the relay fails, that 12-volt current isn't going into the inside of that processor. But that's really the only time that I can say that I've had a bad product, but it wasn't even to the product's fault. It was to like the relay's fault failing, which would then destroy the product. And, Gary kind of made this comparison when we were talking about it on another podcast. When you have one person, one installer that deals with the same product over and over again, the potential of the product. The absolute best that product can sound. So there's a huge advantage in that aspect, right? So if I have a client come to me and I sell him Focal Flax, I know exactly how the best scenario of how these speakers should perform in this car, versus if a customer is bringing me product that I really don't know or have experience with, I don't know the limitations or the maximum potential of that equipment. So in the case where I'm selling systems that I do on a daily basis, I can almost verify that this is the best that this equipment is going to get. Does that make sense?
When you've achieved that level
exactly
of getting everything out of
right.
it.
And that, I think that all comes down to solid engineering. And that's where, when you have a team where the design work is done in-house, the engineering is done in-house, the building is done in-house, and QC is really high, you end up with a higher quality product. And there's a lot of really good product out there and a lot of people do this. And as far as amplifiers and electronics, I think that's more the norm than the anomaly. But when it comes to speakers, that's a different story. Because there's so many people out there. And when I mean people, companies that are marketing firms that put their name on something, and there is no engineering and design behind it. There's not. And what they will do is they will go and say, that's a really cool frame. I like this frame. And can you put this size magnet on this because I want this voice call? Sure, we can do that. Then I would like to have this kind of cone. Will that work with it? Well, no, that won't, but this will. Oh, well, let's do that. That happens a lot.
I feel like in my head as you're describing that, the subwoofer in my head that I'm picturing as you're describing that becomes the Audiobahn flame, the flame basket.
This, we're and if anybody has ever
it's
been
sold though.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it's sold.
If anybody has ever been to CES and you go between the North Hall and the old LVH, you're going to have to go through what I call the gauntlet. And it's every Chinese manufacturer on God's earth that has anything to do with amplifiers and speakers and processors and watches and knives. And oh my God, they will build anything for you, and they'll copy anybody's shit, and they don't care who it is, and they can build it, and it's $6.27 your cost. You order 5,000. Oh my God. I have seen
every installer walks through and goes, I could start a speaker company.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have, and I'm like, guys, really? There's no engineering. And there's no solid engineering behind it. And as much as we all would like to think that it's not that difficult to do, I got news for everybody. Yes, it is. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 16. I'm 60. If you think that I could go right now this minute after everything I know, after all the people I've talked to, and after everything that has been taught to me, I couldn't go build a freaking subwoofer to save my life. It's going to work? No, I know better. And that's because I know people who have this little thing called PhD at the end of their freaking name. And they will tell you this is not as easy as it sounds to make something work. Oh, it can look good. And yeah, it's going to have a lot of throw to it. But if you think it's going to sound worth a damn, no, it is not. And because it's amazing. People need to understand something. When you have a lot of money in a project and you can throw a bunch of money at a project, you can build a really, really good whatever, especially a speaker. Focal spent almost $2.5 million developing the M profiles. They're going to sound good. They got a great engineering team. They've got people who know what they're doing. They got people with PhD at the end of their name. Think about what Bose does with a driver that costs them 3 cents.
I know.
If you stop, and this is what Dr. Winker told me, he said, you stop and think about the brain power behind building that driver that's going to sit in your car for 6 years and is going to be beat up, ultraviolet radiation, heat, cold, humidity. Oh my God, your son spilling God knows what on it, and it still plays and it still sounds like that. And they built it for how much money? Do you know what kind of engineering prowess it took to pull that off?
And I use that as a selling tactic on so many vehicles, right? Because there's a cavalcade of people out there that will hop in their new car, right? And I saw it even with when I posted the final pictures of the Tesla Model 3, right? So I posted this build log to a lot of the Tesla pages. And of course, you have a ton of Tesla people that are like, man, the car already sounds absolutely amazing. How much better are you actually making it sound? Just shit like that.
Yeah.
And when you can talk to a client and say, listen, what's in your car is literally paper and plastic drivers that cost the manufacturer maybe 5 to 10 cents to make per speaker, right? And you have limited power that's not clean, and it sounds that good from how you get it. Because realistically speaking, when you hear the audio in like a car like that, with you knowing what the equipment is made out of, it is a feat of engineering. You're just like, holy shit, it sounds really good for what's in here, right? Right? I mean, I think anyone with knowledge could agree with that. And
yeah, Matt, you got to remind those guys that if you're riding a bike, a used Yugo seems like an engineering marvel.
Yeah. So when you actually get a speaker like a Utopia M, right, that's basically engineered to be kind of the best version of a speaker that could be played in a car, and then you pair that with something that would, with Mosconi would make, where you have kind of the best version representation of an amplifier to get true power, clean power, and you put that together with the DSP and you're eliminating the whole atmosphere of the car. At that point, you can imagine what that end result would be. And there's so many times when, like, just saying the Tesla Model 3, for instance, where we did the Illusion C8 in the front, the C3CX in the pillar, we did Focal FPX as amplifiers. And when that client hears the car and hears the end result, and it's basically this atmosphere that he's just like, holy shit, I've never heard anything like this. That's when the wheels start turning for that client to be like, what the fuck? I wonder what Utopia M would sound like with Mosconi Pro.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, you just start making those progressions, and you're like, I don't understand what better than this is. What is that?
Until you hear better than this.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's hard for people to grasp. I mean, it really is. And one of the things that, we've been at Orca, what we've been doing for the last, I guess, 3 weeks, um, is we've really been just talking about how important DSP processing is today. And regardless of whether it's entry level product all the way to in profile, the DSP has become a necessity.
And it's a necessity for the fact that it's almost starting to become mainstream in every single manufacturer system, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So, like, if I hop in my wife's Mazda CX-9 with Bose, it has center point, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to have decent imaging from the factory. Whereas if you're not doing a DSP from the aftermarket level, and you don't have the education to understand how to even tune a DSP, you're not going to make the car sound better than that factory CX-9 audio system.
No, you're not.
And that is why it's so important for people like, shops like Gary and I to be educated to understand how to integrate this equipment in today's atmosphere so you can get something better than your average run-of-the-mill, here's your CX-9 audio system with Bose.
Yeah. I mean, Ken Ward, God bless Ken Ward. Ken Ward was telling me, this was a couple of years ago, that in a base GMC Canyon, we're talking a base, that he measured out of, I think, the right mid-bass driver in the door on the right-hand side of the car, there's an all-pass filter. Now, first of all, if you don't know how to measure for it, you're screwed because you can't fix it without a DSP. If you were to not have the DSP and you couldn't go in there and fix that, I don't care what you do. You can put amps and sub and speakers. If you do not correct for that problem, quote unquote, in that car, your car's not going to sound worth a damn.
Right.
And this is one of the things that dealers don't get. And we've been trying desperately to get them to all understand. Look, these are tools. This is as important as any other tool you have in the store, whether it's in that Snap-on or Matco box, or whether it's an oscilloscope, or whether it happens to be your laser. This understanding how this little box works is becoming a priority and a necessity, because if you can't fix or correct what the factory amp has, because a lot of people don't get that factory amplifier is tuned with a DSP for the speakers that are in that car, not for the speakers we are about to put in that car, but for the speakers that are in there. And if we don't correct for that, that car is going to sound like shit.
Right.
Even with,
and that also brings up the opportunity to add additional sources. Like when you see me do just an average system, I would say even the most entry level system, it's going to have more than one source, right? So it's going to have your OEM source. It's going to have possibly an AMAS at minimum. And the reason we're doing that is because when we're associating the factory signal that we have to stitch the signal together. Obviously, we're using the factory radios, DAC, all that kind of stuff in a combination. It's never going to equate having a perfect digital signal going directly to the processor.
Yeah.
That you're not going to have to worry about phasing or anything like that with the signal. And obviously, I've kind of explained this over and over again, where you can actually connect to like an AMAS at the same time as you're connecting to the factory radio. So it physically looks like you're using the factory radio, but you're just diverting the signal to the processor and getting the audio, but yet all your information still comes up on the display. When you end up doing that, the end result, it's like you're flipping a light switch and you're like, holy shit, is there a different system in here? And a lot of it is because the system or the signal at that point is pure. You don't have to overcome the phasing, the summing, and all that kind of stuff with all the different speakers. And you have obviously a perfect digital signal directly to the processor. And then you take another step once you go to like an Astel and Kern player, and now you have like a really amazing DAC now feeding the processor, and now the separation has just like increased tenfold to where now it's like the way that I explain that is almost like a star explodes in space, and all of a sudden space grows like tenfold, right? So now instead of having a lot of stuff centralized, now there is a massive amount of space within the car. And I just talked to Chris. I think we sold him an SP2000 Astel with one of the builds that he's doing currently.
Yeah.
And I think he told you, I guess he was like, yeah, we played it on this and this, and then we played the Astel, and then it was just like a fucking game changer.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it always is. When that's one of the things that I think as an industry, we don't stress enough how good the source unit needs to be.
correct.
And I understand that, yes, the speakers are 80% of it. Yes, I'll be the first person to tell you this. God's honest truth. But it's people need to understand, and they're gonna and this is gonna be blatant advertisement for me and my webcam, my WebEx tomorrow. Sorry. We're going to be discussing
The high res
tomorrow and why it is what it is.
I guess we just dated this episode, by the way.
Yeah, we just did. But one of the things that people need to understand is the reason that it's so important is your signal is only as good as its weakest link. And if you have shit going in, there is shit coming out. I don't care what.
It might be louder shit.
But it's still shit.
Definitely louder shit.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be louder. And it may be more dynamic, but it's still shit. And when you have an opportunity to, going back, again, let's go back to 95. In 1995, there were, I'm going to count them. 1, 2, 3. There were 10 head units that were at least $3,000 a piece. Somebody tell me where there is one head unit today that is $3,000 retail.
Right.
There's not.
And the best argument there is you get a decent player, you get a decent DSP, and you're basically where you're at when you were getting a really nice head unit back in the day.
Yeah. And the reason, and people keep talking about, well, why were they so damn expensive back then? Well, number one, the lasers and the pickups and all that were a little more expensive. The transports were more expensive. Yes. But that's not the reason they cost so much money. It was the preamps that were being built.
The DAC was insane.
With the power supplies that were being utilized. They didn't have to power a screen. They didn't have to power, all the peripherals, the Bluetooth interfaces, all of these things that we have to power today to make everybody happy. What happened to the audio signal? Well, it's an afterthought. And now here we come from 95. Now go with me. We were back then, it was still, God, a 20-bit 44.1 kilohertz signal was the shit. Oh my gosh. Look where we are today. And when you see like what's sitting in that brand new Dodge truck of mine sitting outside, that 12-inch screen and the Uconnect, I found something out about that thing today that I did not know. For the very first time, I plugged my Android V30 into one of my USB inputs. I didn't use the damn phone in it. And I'm playing a 2496 file digital into the unit and kiss my ass if it doesn't play it at 2496. There's a screen on my HF on my B30. I have Onkyo HF player, the app plugged into it. And I'm looking at it, and it will read, and it will tell you what the DAC in this unit will play back. It's saying it's 2496. And it sounds like it. And I was amazed. And I was going, wow, this is really, really good. And if you know what's coming in the very near future, when I mean the near future, I mean like next year, if you know what is coming in OEM car audio starting next year, it is frightening how good it is about to get. As for those of you out there listening to this, if you want to know how good it's about to get, go to Jeep's website and go or just type in Jeep Grand Wagoneer Macintosh and see what comes up. They have got a picture of the dash in this thing. I don't know what Alpine and Macintosh did, but oh my God, it's gorgeous. And they're using real Macintosh Class AB amplifiers in that thing with Sonus Faber / ScanSpeak drivers in this thing. And the Mac engineers are the one that actually sat in this prototype and designed the audio system in this thing. What do you think it's some bitch is going to sound like? It's a 30 speaker system with, I think it said 2,000 watts.
Wow.
It's a lot of engineering.
What are we going to put in that thing to make it sound better?
Like I said, and that's what's going to weed out a lot of the uneducated crowd of, what Gary and I have to deal with.
And this is where I'm concerned. I am more concerned than I was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I kept saying, if you don't understand DSP, if you don't understand how to tune, if you don't understand how to make things work in a car, you're going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a couple of things I think on that is that's not, I don't see that becoming the norm. I mean, you think about what it costs to do that, and there's no way that's making it into wide production cars. I think it's totally awesome that they're obviously set a high level. We keep talking about these benchmarks, whether it's Grand Utopia or it's Alpine F1 status or whatever that, racing program for the audio world is. I think it's really cool that that a car manufacturer is pushing to do something at that level and getting those brands involved. I think that's really cool to see and will increase awareness across the board for audio, and it will help some people elevate their standard. So somebody who has that car may now say, well, my other car doesn't sound anywhere like this. I want this for my other car. So I see that's a net positive for our world.
For sure.
It could be. But we all know that trickle down happens. And I'm not talking about, next year. I'm looking.
Yeah. Other cars are going to have to adapt to make that the minimum or the standard of what they would have to create.
Well, here's the thing. 5 years from now, this is my concern. Where are we going to be 5 years from now? Because these vehicles, you can see where the public is demanding. You can see what the public's demanding. Okay. 5 years ago, let's go back to 2015. Audi in 2013 launched the B&O system. They still have them. They've got more of them. You can get it now in an A3. Okay. And the most profitable part of any car is the audio system. Every dealer that I've talked to in Austin will tell you they make more money off the audio system. So recently order almost every single solitary car. If you take a look at the new Tahoe, there's 22 speakers in the new Tahoe. In a base Tahoe, there's a 12 speaker system in the base Tahoe. It's DSP enabled. It's DSP tuned.
We had Steve Brown on a few episodes ago, and we were kind of chatting about kind of the same thing where we're at right now is like, where's car audio going? And obviously, more and more when cars become autonomous, guess what? Like the opportunity for car audio is going to become extreme, right?
Yes.
Because now it's like we're sitting at home, right? Because
Yeah.
we're not driving. So there's more and more opportunity to enjoy the atmosphere of the car.
Exactly.
And that is where I think that the aftermarket is really going to have to adapt. Companies like Orca, Focal, all of these other places are going to have to make it easier and easier for the low tier installer to be able to recreate something that is better than what the manufacturers are putting out. When it comes to people like Gary and I, obviously, we almost have to self educate and become small tier engineers in order to create something that is far better than what manufacturers are putting out. So it's like we have to adapt more than the manufacturers because now we're like people like us in the aftermarket, we're competing with technology. So we
Yes.
have to do way more work in order to give the customer the return on the investment. If he's spending $8,000 on an audio system, to be like, man, this was money well spent. And in order to do that, we have to come up with a product that, without much thought with that client, he's saying, this sounds extraordinarily better than it did when I dropped off the car.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see that as being an issue. And the reason I say that is because I have not sat in I haven't sat in a car that came with a factory system that I didn't think I could make sound better with putting $5,000 into the car.
Right, but we're also kind of projecting ourselves to that 5-year mark. 5 years from
Right.
now,
I don't think that they're ever going to get to the point where they'll allow the electrical demands on a car from the factory. Like, I don't see them wanting to run a piece of 4-gauge to an amplifier.
see, I just feel like we're going to get to this point where the car is going to become more technology based rather than like
Yes.
performance based, right?
Yeah.
We're going to care we're going to care less about the horsepower, the performance, because the car is going to be autonomous, and we're going to care more about the atmosphere of the car. So I feel like there's going to be a tilt with the manufacturers that more of their money for the car and where that money is spent is going to be on the electronics of the vehicle.
Would you gentlemen like to know what's about to happen in about 3 years?
I would assume you're referencing higher voltage for the electronic system.
That is part of it. But let me tell you what I had to do research for Kimon. And one of the things that I found out during my research is, as Matt was talking about, was the autonomous cars. Lyft and Uber have been talking to Toyota, Ford, and General Motors about buying not just thousands, hundreds of thousands of autonomous cars. And what they want to do is eliminate your car payment.
Right.
They're going to offer as a service. The car will come pick you up. The car will take you to work. The car will pick you up, bring
For
you
like a
home
monthly
from work.
fee.
They're going to do away with your car payment. They're going to do away with you owning the car, your maintenance fees, your insurance, and you do not have to worry about driving the son of a bitch anymore. Now, I can tell you, everybody in my neighborhood that I've talked to about this, they are all for this because their average drive is about 35 to 40 minutes one way every day. And if they don't have to get behind the wheel and drive, and if they can sit in the back of that son of a bitch and it drives everybody to work, they're all for it. And guess what? Lyft wants to charge to it per month as a flat fee. Take a guess.
It's something stupid like $200 a month.
I would hope.
$199 a month.
Yeah.
So stop and think. I don't have to worry about that anymore. So we have an opportunity, maybe. But the other thing that I found out is every vehicle starting in, I believe it was 2024 red, they are going to communicate with each other. They are actually going to let each car know that it's at 5 miles ahead, it's raining, or there's a pothole. Be linked to each other. Every car is going to be telemetry linked to each other on the road. They're going to communicate on the road, or there's this type of hazard on the road, or there's a report that there's been a wreck. You need to move over. The telemetry will also be sending information to your insurance company on how you're driving every minute of every day, and they will adjust your rates every minute of every day. Are you prepared for that?
Nope.
They're also going to be sending telemetry issues on the maintenance of your vehicle and how you're driving your vehicle to your local dealer. I have been told when that starts, we are going to be locked out of these cars. As an industry, we're going to be locked out because they cannot afford to have somebody hack that system and cause a wreck. This happened in Europe about 3 years ago or 4 years ago. There was a truck that was an autonomous vehicle. It's an experiment, from what I've been told. And there was a huge wreck on the Autobahn in Germany. It was like 32 cars involved in this. And this trucking company got sued out the wazoo. And they lost because the truck apparently got hacked. And the European insurance companies told the European Union that if you're going to do this, guess what? Nobody can work on these cars because it has to be a completely closed system from here on. That means you can't plug into them, you can't tune them, you can't do squat. And the insurance companies here are leading the parade on this right now, this minute. And I got that from 3 different sources.
You're being a huge buzzkill right now. I feel like you should stop talking.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I feel
I'm just being honest, guys.
Yeah,
I mean, this is what the guy that actually owns my insurance company, he's the one that was telling me all this. And he's telling me, he said, this is coming, whether we like it or not.
So what's your favorite restaurant?
I was gonna say I have some other inside information that I can't share on the podcast, but of some other future stuff coming to some cars that is absolutely going to make life difficult.
Oh my God!
I know.
Absolutely going to make
I
life
have no
difficult.
information. I feel like I'm so left out.
So what I'm trying to explain to everybody is this: technology is advancing at warp drive, and I don't mean just warp 1. We're talking warp 5, warp 6, and it's going to go to warp 9 within the very near future. As far as artificial intelligence is going to be in every car. So the manufacturers, as these cars get more sophisticated and there's more computing power involved in them, if anybody thinks that you're going to be able to take $99 coaxials and a pair of $149 separates and a 4-channel amp and a sub, and you're going to make the car sound better, I got news for you. No, you're not.
Yeah, I feel like that's true with most of the shops that we're like familiar with. I feel like the only people that are going to be able to make it in our industry are people that are understanding of where the industry is going, what has to be done,
yes,
and just executing on the level of what you're receiving from the manufacturer nowadays. And I feel like that's why a shop like Gary and I are so successful in the business that we do, in the fact that we that's our goal, is to perform at like an OE level, but you're getting the performance of something that you expect, or something that's beyond your expectations
exactly
of what you should be getting today.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah,
I think
I don't think that's going to be the norm, and I always feel like even when we get to those crazy points where if we're locked out of a car from an electronic standpoint, that there will be auxiliary batteries and amplifiers and speaker replacement and standalone control.
Yeah, we had the point in a car where we went from carburetor to fuel injected to like now we had CAN
the fuel
bus
cells.
and yeah, we had all like I feel like the whole world and this can even get into politics like we've dealt when you look at the political atmosphere of where we're at today and I
Hmm.
know we're not a political podcast but at the end of the day
We
like
did such a good job steering away from all that too.
this really
I'm
isn't
staring at it
different
right now.
this really isn't different than what we've
Jesus.
experienced like well in the past like we've always had issues we've always dealt with adversity and at the end of the day I feel like us as people we've always adapted and evolved, right? And at the end of the day, no matter where the manufacturers are going to take the entertainment industry of cars, I feel like naturally we're going to evolve and adapt of the aftermarket because we're going to be steered by companies like Focal and Alpine and a bunch of other different companies who their livelihoods depend on adapting and evolving,
Right.
right?
And some of them
So,
have good insight because a lot of the car audio manufacturers that on the aftermarket also work with manufacturers on the OEM side.
correct, right.
And some of that information they can share within and some of it they can't, but
But they can't. Yeah.
yeah, they'll be ready. They'll be ready.
Here's the thing. The reason that I'm talking about this, it's not to scare anybody. It's to get everybody to understand that you've got to step up your game. You've got to understand that what we did 20 years ago, what we did 10 years ago, isn't going to fly anymore. I'm sorry, it's not. This is reality. If you do not embrace the technology that is here today, that allows us to work on the vehicles of today to actually make them sound better, and not just a little bit, but substantially better. If you don't grasp what we're doing today, in 5 years, when God knows what we're going to have to deal with, you're going to be that much further behind, and you may not be here in 7 years. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm worried about. And I'm very, very concerned because I'm going to be honest with you guys, in 5 years, I'm walking away. I'm going to be done. God willing, and the creek don't
Gonna,
rise.
gonna
And
get in your Uber and go off into the sunset.
I'm going to get my boat and my little electric motor. Oh, God help me. And no, if I had my way, I'm going to have a 300 horsepower motor on the back of the damn boat, and I'm going to burn gas just to piss somebody off. But that's me. Um, but we have to adapt. I mean, Matt's absolutely right. We all have to adapt and overcome, and we have to embrace technology, unfortunately. And I know a lot of people out there, because of this black box plugs into a computer, it scares the hell out of them. I
Yeah, I
deal
mean,
with
I
those
think
people every day.
yeah, I feel like that again. Most of our listeners, well, the goal of this was to be more customer facing than installer
Correct.
facing, but
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
feel like that's already been the case. I feel like for any of the shops that aren't confident in using a DSP and I shouldn't say confident is the wrong word because I know some shops that are confident in using a DSP and they still make cars sound terrible with them. That you have to be good with the DSP. You have to take the
Yeah.
time and invest the time. And if you're not already at that point, you got to get on that train.
Yeah,
Like you
kind of like I alluded to. I mean, with manufacturers almost making this mainstream, right?
Yes.
To where customers are now experiencing the magic that we're generally doing on even basic type systems when it comes to like a basic sound stage. That's becoming their new norm, their new expectations, right? So if you're not at least meeting that or, you know, going far beyond
Hmm.
that, the customer's not impressed. And I often say to clients, and the way that I often sell is based on high expectations. And I will give, a lot of people say, give low expectations and over deliver, things like that. But at the end of the day, when it comes to car audio, the expectations of what most clients are expecting are so low. So for me, I really overbuild the expectations because I know that I can still exceed high expectations, right?
Bingo.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So I'm building excitement and I'm exceeding those expectations when it comes to delivering the car to the client because I know that even if I say this is going to be the best car that you've ever sat in, I know it's going to be the best car they've ever sat in, right? So when we're getting to this point where manufacturers are doing a better and better job, it's really going to weed out the shops that really aren't investing the time in understanding the equipment. And it's going to make shops like Gary and I like outliers, right? We're gonna
Yeah.
the industry is going to shrink when it comes to audio.
Yep.
And
It is.
you'll still have your accessories, your cameras, your lighting, the shit that doesn't come on cars. But when it comes to audio, based on engineering and where companies or manufacturers are developing their cars, it's going to get better and better. And now there is really only going to be a select handful of shops that can really exceed what the manufacturer is giving.
I found all the maker's mark. Oh my God. It's in the bottom of my cup. No, I think Matt's right. And I don't want that.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
it would suck for audio companies like Vocal
it's
for
gonna,
car.
it really will
So
because
I'm very excited to see companies like that trying to adapt and develop product to help the smaller shops that really aren't educated to develop
yeah, and
good
I think
sound.
that's where you're finding out that's the reason the plug and play stuff is becoming more prevalent with all the European manufacturers because they're on the cusp of it over there. I mean, let's face it. For those of you who are listening to this and you don't know this, shops like your average everyday run of the mill car audio shop in the United States, there aren't that many of them in Europe because there are so many laws and regulations in Europe that prohibits people from working on their cars. You cannot cut metal in Europe. Putting something in kick panels or a door, no, you cannot do that. You can put something on a dash, yeah, as long as you don't cut the metal in the A pillar. Oh, if you do that, God forbid, because then it won't pass inspection. So, and so you can't do custom. It's really difficult to do custom. And there aren't that many stores or shops to actually go install stuff. So you got to do it yourself. I mean, the last time I saw a shop in France, it's like going to Pep Boys. And you see everybody's stuff is on shelves. And you just go pick it up, pay for it, and go and install it yourself. That's the way it's done.
Yeah, I remember when we were in France and we were talking to Pierre and just talking about what car audio shops were like in France, and they're basically non-existent.
Yeah, there's five.
Yeah.
And and that's a country, I think, of like 60 million people.
And
There's
there's
five.
5 shops in a quarter-mile radius of me.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. But it's because it's so difficult to work on a vehicle. So they know that, and they know it's going to get worse. So this is the reason they're doing what they're doing. And they're not just the only one. There's a lot of other companies out there. They've seen the light, and there's a lot of them that's been doing it. But it's again, it's going to come down to those companies that have the engineering prowess. They have what it takes to design and build something that's going to exceed OEM, utilizing OEM amps and placement. That's a difficult thing to do. And it's when you're building an inexpensive product, quote unquote, it costs more money to build an inexpensive product and to get it to sound really, really good. And so when you're thinking about a product, let's say that we're all used to selling at $69, or $99 or $1.49. Does anybody realize how difficult that is going to be for the
That
manufacturers to
makes
pull
sense.
off?
Yeah.
Even with the economies of scale, and you've got, tens of thousands of dealers across the country, across the world. You're talking millions of dollars, millions of US dollars invested. And most of those companies that I know of are not going to take 10 years to recoup their investment. They're not going to. It's 3 years to recoup the investment. And then they've got to start turning a profit on that investment after that. So if you're looking at, let's just say, $2.5 to $3 million US, that means you've spent probably 24 to 30 months worth of R&D to get it built. Okay. So that means you're looking at 800,000, 700,000 a month. Okay. 70,000 a month, 80,000 a month. Okay. That's what you're spending. Then you're going to turn around and you're going to get this product out, and you're going to have to recoup $2.7 million. Let's just say. Now that's on average. It's about what Focal spends in 3 years on the average products. Is somewhere between 2.5, 3 million. So in 36 months, if you want to recoup just recoup the investment, not making a damn dime, you've got to sell how much product a month around the world? That's a lot before you make the first dime off that product. Somebody asked me the other day, why did it take them so long to revamp Utopia? I was like, ain't broke, don't fix it. But it also stop and think about how much money it cost them to build it, how much money it took them, how long it took them to recoup it. And then they looked at the overall return on the investment. It took them 10 years. It takes a long time because there's not that much of it sold. Even if they're going to sell a lot of entry level product, quote unquote, it's going to take a very long time to recoup the investment. And in today's market, you can't do that. You've got to recoup your investment in one hell of a hurry. Because again, technology, things are moving at warp speed. So in 3 years, it's already made a quantum leap forward. They're already looking at the next thing. And this isn't just Focal, this is everybody. So to build an inexpensive product that actually sounds good, this is going to get way more difficult to do because how fast things are moving.
Yeah, I feel like I said, I feel like the biggest pressure is really put on car audio manufacturers aftermarket at this point in time. It's not
Yep.
so much right now the run of the mill ma and pa shops. I feel like they'll feel the pressure after the manufacturers feel the pressure.
Yeah.
Because they'll have to try and adapt if the manufacturers can adapt.
No, I agree 100%.
Well, and if you want to look at it from who has it the worst, think of the Amp of Americas and the Nav TVs of the world that are helping us in a huge way integrate with a lot of cars and they already can't quick enough validate new applications and have software available to interface with new cars. That's a lot of work and a lot of dollar expenses.
Yes, it is.
And it's really helped in the high end
for sure.
world and integration and the ability to use processors. And that's a lot of great stuff. And I feel really bad for those guys because that's got to be the worst tech support backup and so many potential issues.
As many variations off of a BMW 3 Series there is. Oh my God. I don't even want to think about it. Yeah, no. Matt, it is 1:00 in the morning where you are.
Yeah, I know.
Matt's tired.
This is how it always works out. I try and always adapt for my West Coast people. I'm always fine. I just keep going on. I drank a lot of coffee before I got on here.
Well, I'm just going to tell y'all.
We'll wrap it up here soon because it's
Okay.
almost been
I
like
think
a
we're good. And you
2-hour
have
podcast.
yeah,
But
and I think
I feel like
I don't
anytime
mind
that we
going.
all, I feel like
Trust me.
anytime that we talk, we could probably go 5 hours. But
Oh, we
yeah,
can't. Trust
yeah.
me. I mean,
we'll probably
I will
extend
sit
this
here all
into a
night
part 2 at some
because you
point.
guys, you know me, I'm gonna sit here and talk with you guys all night. I don't give a shit. But
Yeah.
I got a WebEx I got to do in the morning.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have a
Yeah.
big date tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
I
I
feel like
have
I might hop on that too tomorrow because I feel like there's
it's
so much gray area when it comes to what is and what is not high res. There is a lot to, when we're talking about like the Astels that I use all the time, a lot of what you're
yep.
hearing in the difference is actually the DAC, not the fact that it's high res music, quote
No,
unquote. So there's so much misinformation out there. There's so much gray area out there when it comes to high res and what and how to really make it work for your application, and where the benefit lies in high res.
yeah. What we're going to be
It's a hard
discussing.
subject.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. Basically, it's going to be, why is it being done? What was the reason behind it? We're going to be going over the different formats, what everybody uses, what they can use, what is available, what is high res Bluetooth, is it
Right.
really high res? We're going to be going over all of
Plus,
that. And
I feel like with the evolution of speakers, when you look at the Nyquist theorem, that basically states, a half octave below the sample rate is where you can recreate a perfect analog waveform,
hmm,
which is why 1644, 44 being the sample rate, a half octave below that is basically 22,000 hertz, which is our whole spectrum of hearing for
yeah,
a human, which is why a lot of people say anything beyond a CD is really irrelevant. Um, Brings into the argument nowadays where we have like Focal Utopia M tweeters that have a frequency response up to like 50K, right? And you can make the argument that obviously anything beyond 20K, we can inherently feel on our body, on our skin, which is adding to what makes it feel real, right? If we know speakers can recreate at these at this frequency response range that is well beyond 20,000 hertz, there is benefit there that you will feel on your body that inherently is going to make the music feel real. Because I don't care who you are or how many systems you've heard, if you've sat into numerous vehicles that have Utopia in it, there's a different feeling with the emotional response of what
sure,
you're hearing, right?
yeah,
It strikes your body way differently than your run
yeah,
of the mill car audio speakers, right?
absolutely,
It strikes an emotion in your body, and that's like one of the big things that if a car sounds like really good off the bat is I feel like once you start hearing vocals, you feel if you can feel that emotional response with the music, right?
yeah.
It can
Um,
happen very quickly.
I know that when Sony brought the GS9 out, and we'll end it here because I'll talk about this one all night.
Right.
Um,
I have a question after all this though. So
that's fine.
don't click off real
No, I
quick.
won't. When Sony first brought the GS9 out, one of the things that they that I had the opportunity to do it at the very first K-Fest to introduce that unit was to actually sit down and talk with the lead engineer who actually designed the Super Audio CD, with Philips. And he told me that what they discovered is that there is the ability of the human body to
Mm-hmm.
experience frequencies not only above 20,000 hertz, but below 20 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why the frequency response is what it is. It's 5 hertz to 100,000 hertz, which a lot of people don't know. But he was telling me that in the very near future, Sony was going to release tweeters that would play to 40,000 hertz. And I asked him, why are they going to do that? He said, so you can experience the music. Oh, okay. I'm being the skeptic. I'm calling bullshit. Well, okay, fine. Well, we get beryllium tweeters, and I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to find out right now. So in my truck, I put a set of beryllium tweeters with my C3CXs, and I put a switch on them. Yes, I know. I don't want to talk about it. But I turned them on and I turned them off when I was playing a 24 192 file or a DSD file. And the difference was astonishing in how you felt and what your perception of depth, height, width, three dimensionality was. It was amazing. And I had talked about this up on the DIY forum, and I got called every name in the book, lying piece of shit, whatever. Well, I'm at IASCA finals that year, and a lot of you know Ada.
Mm-hmm.
Ada comes up to me and he goes, "I want to hear your truck, and I want you to show me. Can you show me the difference between high res?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I get him in there, and I play it, and then I turned it off, and he goes, "What the hell did you do?" And I said, "Did you hear this?" He goes, "That's amazing." And turned it back on. He goes, "Oh my God." And I said, "Now do you understand what they're doing?" I said, "A lot of this has to do with getting it as close to the good old fashioned analog wave formation. But the engineers at Sony were telling me there is something to us having the ability, as far as our body is concerned, to actually in feel things all the way to 40, 50,000 hertz
Mm-hmm.
and all the way down to 5 hertz, for that matter of fact. There is something to it. And I'll be the first person to tell you, I've heard it. I've experienced it. I've heard it, when you listen to Utopia drivers and you have a high res playback, it's amazing when it's done right. And again, I agree, it's DSP tuning,
Yeah,
but
and generally every time that I do a
it's
system,
amazing.
kind of how I told Gary in the past is, I'll always 100% of the time do a preset, obviously with the OEM radio. If we're not doing like a Zen Nav TV piece or a Mo Bridge, then I'll absolutely do an AMAS.
Yeah.
And then I'll always do a analog input that can feed a high res player.
Yep.
And the reason I do that is, even if they're not purchasing one up front, I can do the A B comparison and I can show them this is what your potential of your system could be, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's always obvious, right? It's like taking your 4K TV, throwing 4K content at it and being like, "Holy shit, my TV looks great," versus putting 720p through your TV and being like, "Oh, this TV's just all right."
Yeah.
Right? So you can experiencing that difference real quickly.
Absolutely.
And what I would love Mosconi to do in the future is to take a playbook out of the JLVXI controller. And the reason I love that so much is because you can change presets with like a split second. So a lot of the times when I'm demoing a system, and the other good part about it is with like if you're on a digital source and you want to go back to the OEM source really quick for like a phone call, you can just literally tap the button twice or once and you're back to the OEM source like that, right? Versus hitting the button again, going to
Oh,
preset 3, whatever, you're back at preset, and now you're on the OEM source, right? There's a
okay.
lot of time loss.
With the new software, I'll show you how to do it.
Okay, can't wait.
You don't have to touch shit. It does it automatically.
Well, that's beautiful. Can't wait to hear
Anytime,
about
you can, in the new software, you can go in and designate and say, okay, this signal takes priority 1, this signal's priority 2, this signal's priority 3.
it.
And it switches 1, 2, 3. And you can say 1 second delay, 3 second delay, 5 second delay, whatever. It's
Nice.
way cool. It shifts it automatically. You do not have to touch that damn remote volume control.
Yeah, so that's the adaptability when it comes to like being more and more in tune with the OEM, because I feel like what Gary and I have to do with clients is you want the end result to be as close to like an OEM application as possible,
Yep.
where they don't have to fuck around with much
Yep.
to have the experience, right?
Yep.
So the more fuckery we have with product, the more and more it is to be like, oh, it's kind of inconvenient, and then they stop using the high res player because it's too much work, right? So,
That's a good segue to my question.
Okay.
okay, what's your question?
Obviously, Nick has a ton of experience using the Sony unit, right? If you
Yes.
guys had to put a brand new, if I had to go get a brand new head unit
Okay.
to be the source unit of my system, okay, and I have a processor that has digital in, I'll let you decide if that's fiber optic or coax digital.
Okay.
What head unit choices do you have that you can control and play back high res music digitally to go into a processor?
You mean in 12 volt or in general?
Yeah, for a car.
For me, it would just be an SP2000, but that's
Yeah,
not
I
like an
was going to say,
installed application.
yeah, I would
Wait,
keep the OEM. I would keep the OEM unit, whatever the heck it is, and I don't care what it is. And I would spend the money on, an A&K SP2000, SP1000.
but you don't have control of your music from up front.
Why wouldn't you? It's
I
in
mean,
your,
it's handheld,
it's
like your
Right,
handheld.
phone would
right.
be.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to have a handheld device in the car in California. Can't touch a handheld electronic device.
Well,
Ticket.
with the Sony, you still, if you're going to get the maximum out of it, you still have to have a handheld device.
That's what I'm saying.
Right,
Why
because
don't we?
that's the
But
only way that
I
you're
knew
going to
the
be
answer to
able
my
to.
question. I just wanted to
Okay,
make sure there wasn't
it was
something I didn't know.
rhetorical. Okay, just
Why
say
the
it's a rhetorical
hell?
question.
Why the hell in 2020 don't we have a radio that will play back high resolution files and have a digital output?
Well, I
Why
think
does
the
that
big.
not exist?
Well,
It does.
I think the big
What?
problem there
What
is
does?
that most radio sales are down. Most
Right?
newer cars are integrated. You're not replacing
Yes.
the radio.
But
So
every radio is already digital inside, right? They're going analog to amplify the signal and give you speaker out or RCA out, right?
but at
Yes.
the end
Why
of the
not
day,
keep it digital to digital and give me a digital output? Not one person. Actually, there is one, and I don't know how it controls high res files, and
you
that
need
is
hold on.
the
Hold on.
Stinger. The Stinger radio has a
It
fiber
doesn't.
optic
It doesn't.
out, but I don't know what it does for resolution of
It
files for
it's
playback.
1640. It's 1644. I can tell you that right now.
Well,
So
poop.
here's the issue, right? So anything that you're talking about with digital to digital, you're now assuming that the DAC is going to be into the processor at that
In the
point.
processor, yes.
Right. So any money that you're spending on the source unit is practically irrelevant. Correct?
Right. I just want a convenient way to have album art and be able to use higher resolution files
Okay.
efficiently in the car. And I
It,
don't think there is one.
if you're talking double DIN unit that
Double DIN,
actually
single DIN, any DIN,
that
triple
actually
DIN.
plays well, there is a single DIN, and the GS9 does it.
But
But
But you're not.
does it
it's
give you a
trying to control
digital
it.
out
Yes,
with where's the source? So
the
you
source
have
is your US is a USB input of some kind.
Correct.
okay,
Yeah.
USB in, and
Yeah,
then we get fiber optic out.
you get fiber optic out, but here's the thing that a lot of people do not understand. Protocols with Sony GS9 limits your signal to 2496 resolution. That's it. Now that's a high resolution file, absolutely. Does it sound better than CD? Absolutely. Will it play back DSD? No. Will it transfer 32,384? No. Will it do 2492? No. Why the hell not? Because It costs a hell of a lot more to do that. And quite frankly, the DSP chips they're using in these things, they are at their limits as far as resolution is concerned and the amount of power they're being used as far as the engine is concerned, just driving it. So there's not a quote unquote a higher resolution. I get this question at least twice a week from people. No offense to anybody out there, because I'm one of these as well. They are pain in the ass audiophiles
Mm-hmm.
who want their 32 384 files to be played back, or their 24 192 files to be played back from a fiber optic cable or from a 75 ohm coaxial cable going into their processor. And I tell them, your fiber optic won't do it because of the protocols. It's not going to do it.
Correct.
If you do happen to have like an Stellan Kern or something that you're getting, you're going to come analog out, you're going to convert it to the digital output, you're going to put a 75 ohm coaxial cable, or you're going to use an RCA input. The run has to be about 1.5 meters in order for 24 192 to take place. And then they get madder than hell. And they're like, well, why does that not happen? I said, well, because it's called clocking. Between point A and point B, when you get past about 1.5 meters, it loses clocking. They don't communicate with each other very well. And they get pissed. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Well, I said, go to your home system. Yeah. Okay. Take the same damn cable. If you've got a DAC preamp at your house, it's got a digital input and it's using RCA input. Yeah. I said, take a 10 meter or a 5 meter run and go plug into it and see if it clocks off of your phone or whatever the hell. I said, I guarantee you it's not going to do it. Oh, that's bullshit. Okay, fine, go do it because I've done it. Guess what? You're going to spend it. Yeah, there is cable out there that'll do it, and you're going to have to pick up the phone and call Ray Kimber or Stephen Hill at Straightwire or the folks at Wire World or the folks. I can go on. It's going to be $1,500 or $2,000 for you to get the cable to do it. Well, quit your bitching. I'm sorry. It costs money to do this. It's just reality.
So I think here's the other argument of the side
Yeah.
that I think where the gray area really comes into the whole high res argument and the bit depth and stuff like that is, when you start talking about like 32-bit music, right? The I think I think the exact number, and I could be wrong, it's between like 6 and 8 dB per bit depth, right?
Correct.
And if we're equating that from 24 to 32, 24 times, just let's call it 6, is 144 dB,
Correct.
right?
That's the
That's
signal to
getting
noise ratio.
close. Yeah, that is getting close to like the pain tolerance of the human ear, right?
Right.
32-bit is almost intolerable to where the human can't even experience the range of 32 bits of music, right? So 32-bit is really irrelevant, and 32-bit is more to appeal to the consumer being a higher number, in my opinion.
Well,
Um,
the main thing here it is when you're talking about, bit depth. Okay. The way that the engineer from Sony described this to me is, and that's the reason why they went back to 1 bit.
as in DSD.
As in DSD.
Yeah.
When you have a 16-bit, the original CD was 16 characters, okay, ones and zeros per second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So every second, it analyzes it and says, okay, so these number of ones and zeros are going to create this amount of music for 1 second. And it has 44.1 kilohertz of sampling, which means it slices that 1 second of ones and zeros 44,100 times, and it looks at it and examines it and says, okay, which ones and zeros is correct and which ones are not correct. And then it corrects for that. Now that's how a compact disc works, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
24-bit means there's 24 characters in which it examined the music. So the resolution goes up. There's more information there. The signal to noise ratio now goes up because there's more information we're looking at, and it's sampling it however many times it is. It's going to slice it into however many slices.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 96 kilohertz, it's 96,000 slices.
Mm-hmm.
And it examines every single one of them, all the way up to 32,384. What he was telling me was that, the reason that you're doing the characters is because they're trying to recreate as close as they can an analog wave formation.
Mm-hmm.
The more bits they have and the higher the sampling rate, which means more slices that they could cut this and look at it, the closer it gets to 80, 100-year-old technology. Believe it or not, that's what this whole thing's all about. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. We get a higher signal to noise ratio. Yes, we do. Is there more information there? Yeah. If it's a native file that's recorded like that, yes, there is. But the reason behind DSD and the reason behind the higher bit ranges is because they're trying to recreate the analog wave formation
Right.
of
So
the turntable.
there's
the whole
somebody
thing.
specifically in our industry that really promotes that anything beyond the CD quality is really
You,
the
you
maximum potential. I think
don't,
my argument
don't you
comes
go
down,
there with me, Matt. Don't get me started. I
I
will get
think
in that person's shit and I'll be here all night.
I think my argument comes down to when we're legitimately looking at the whole high res marketing scheme. I think that anything beyond 2496, as far as a sample rate, 2496 is bit depth and sample rate is
Yeah.
really going to be where you're, as a human, going to, if it is natively recorded at 2496, that's going to be your maximum potential based on where we're at in development with speakers, right?
Yes.
Because again, due to the Nyquist theorem that states that half a sample rate or half octave below the sample rate of the music is where we can create an analog waveform perfectly, that puts us like at where utopias are at.
Correct.
So anything beyond that, my first argument would be nothing is really natively recorded beyond 2496 and 2020. Anything that you're really experiencing beyond that is remastered, which now you have a creative freedom from the master of that track that is perceiving the music differently than you've heard in the past. So now when you're listening to that song, it's going to inherently sound different than you've heard it in the past, which can or cannot lead to the emotional response of the listener based on them not hearing Michael Jackson Thriller how they've heard it in the past, which they're like, holy shit, this sounds so much better. Is it because it's been remastered? Is it because they're listening to it on a better DAC? My opinion of that is it's certainly not because the fact that it's 24,192 or in this case DSD, right? Because if it's DSD, it's been remastered. There is some sort of creative freedom in that track. They've taken, probably noise out of the track, and conceivably it's just a much better digital format of that track than we're used to listening to, which again, maybe the door opening sounds different based on how it was remastered. So is that why we're in the car being like, holy shit, this sounds so much better? Because the door or the wolves in the background sound so much more real? But
yeah,
it's kind of hard to compare to the original master because it's a different track.
It's different.
It's not necessarily because it's DSD. It's because it's been remastered, or
in the case of
because
the
I'm listening to it on a A&K SP2000,
yeah,
and now there's so much more separation. So is that what I'm listening to and hearing in the difference?
I know that when it comes to the remastering, I know that the Sony guys were telling me that when it comes to analog tape,
Mm-hmm.
back
And
in,
you lose bit depth every time you remaster a track when you
exactly.
cut the tape. So I mean, the dynamic range of the track when you remaster it is going to decrease every time it's been remastered.
Exactly. Now, what they're telling me and what they told me was that DSD, when they go in and they remaster it with DSD, the reason it sounds so much better is because it is way closer to the analog wave formation that we're used to hearing off the vinyl or off the master tape. That's the reason why, because it's way closer to how we hear things, which makes sense to me. Because I've always, and I'm one of the pain in the asses who will tell you vinyl sounds better than every freaking thing out there except live. I don't give a shit. You're not going to convince me otherwise because I love my turntables.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the reason why they did what they did with SACD, because they were trying to recreate the vinyl experience with a super compact disc. It's the reason they call it Super Audio CD. The the reason I think that the formats are there today is, number one, there's more information available to us because they're lowering the noise floors so much.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's the big part of it when we're listening to all the remasters. Now, I will tell you that in the classical music world and in the jazz music world, there's a lot of stuff being recorded natively DSD now. And also in 32/384, it's out.
Hmm.
It's amazing. I mean, when you listen to a native record, oh my gosh, it is scary. I mean, I'll listen to it on my home system, and I sit here and I marvel at the level of detail that I experience. And it's not that there's more information with the instruments or the dynamic range is better with the instruments. That's not it. I hear things that you normally don't hear unless you're there, like the air conditioner running. You can hear that. Like you can literally hear people shuffling their feet. You can hear people turning the pages of the music that is 25 feet away from you, and you know they're on the damn soundstage turning the page on the music so they can get ready to play what they're fixing to play because they're reading the music. It's, oh my God. That's what I hear when we go to the symphony. And it's one of the reasons I enjoy going to the symphony. And it's the entire experience of being there. And this is the reason why that the higher resolution stuff is so damn good. And I think it's going to be good for music because we get more of it. You're there. It's more closer to being live. And that's what this whole thing's all about, as far as I'm concerned. It's about the recreation of live music. Now, can we hear the difference in the car? Yeah, if we do our jobs.
Correct.
If you and Gary do your job, yes, you can hear it. Absolutely. No question about it. Is it something that a lot of people are going to be willing to pay a lot of money for? I think once they experience it, then yeah. But to the average everyday
The
consumer,
equipment has to be in place, done correctly,
there you go.
for you to get the benefit. I mean,
And that's it.
there's a point of diminishing returns. It's not like you're installing Focal integrations with a basic amp, no DSP, and doing high
Exactly.
res, and you're getting some benefit. It doesn't exist.
That's just not going to be there, and there's no reason to do it because they'll never
Yeah, I
hear it.
mean, it becomes a
Yeah.
selling point after the basics are in
Yes.
place, and I think now more than any time, um, to get natively recorded content, especially say modern Bruno Mars or modern
That's
Ed Sheeran, right?
not going to happen.
Where it's being recorded, this music is actually being recorded at a higher format now because most of the music is finding its way to Spotify and Pandora, where it's being compressed.
Yep.
The music is going to sound better if it's recorded in a higher format. So you actually find that modern music is being recorded at 2448 or 2496 on a average basis. So now you can really take advantage and notice a pretty dramatic difference when you're listening to modern music, because obviously when we start getting back into the gray area, we can talk about Creedence Clearwater being resold by, I don't know, Columbia Records in 24,192. And fuck me if there's there's a chance that Creedence Clearwater's in 24,192 and it's
No,
legitimate. I mean,
no,
there's
it's
a
just
point where
remastered.
the record labels are, basically just dumping the records and creating a higher bit depth with the same music just to resell the album,
Well,
right?
sure.
So we have to be able to understand what really is and what isn't high res, because again, there are people in our industry that really stand on the hill of 1644 being like, it doesn't, you're not getting a benefit beyond this. And in the sense where we're looking at a high res track of Creedence Clearwater in 24,192, and you're comparing the frequency response for the 24,192 track versus the typical track, yeah, you have an argument to stand on, right? But obviously, when you get into other types of music, there is a difference, especially with the equipment that you have installed in place. So, I mean, I think it's the gray area of marketing of certain companies to push high res is where we need to understand really what is high res and what is an advantage of how we can use it versus what is this snake oil and what is that propaganda to kind of try and resell old albums into the atmosphere,
Well,
especially in the world of streaming where companies are having a harder time like selling their media when they can resell albums as high res. And I just go back to Creedence Clearwater just because there's always so much noise in the tracks. And I think that's a really good example of saying that there's no way that this fucking track is high res, in the sense of what is high res.
well, you have to remember that it's got to be a really good recording to begin with.
Correct.
Okay. And when there's certain, and for those of you out there, I'm about to date myself, and it's just what it is. So deal with it. I'm sorry. But when you have bands that gave a damn about the way things sound, then you can go back and remaster them and bring this new technology
Mm-hmm.
to the forefront, and it will actually get it closer to what it sounded like for the recording engineers and what the band wanted it to sound like.
For
And
sure, like Pink Floyd, Phil Collins,
and that's
Peter Gabriel, there's a bunch of them that really did a
it's
great job in their initial recordings.
exactly. And again, I could not agree with you more with Pink Floyd, and that's because of the gentleman that engineered Pink Floyd's music. Um, Alan Parsons was one of the best, if not the best, recording engineer for rock music there ever was. And if you go listen to today, if you were to go buy Dark Side of the Moon in vinyl and go sit down and listen to it, it holds up to anything recorded today. You go listen to Supertramp's Breakfast in America, or you go listen to Supertramp's Even in the Quietest Moments albums. Unbelievable sound. Unbelievable sound. It's because they were the pain in the asses about the way they wanted the things recorded. The Eagles, the Long Run album is incredible. And that's because of the recording engineers. There are some bands that aren't worth a pint of goat piss. Ted Templeman with Van Halen, I could take him out back and shoot him. I mean, they're horrible. The recordings are terrible. And I wanted to kill him. I'm just like, dear God, man, the greatest guitarist of rock guitarists, damn near of all time. And I got to listen to it. So I'm like, dear shit, don't even get me started. Even if we did high res playback, if we did a conversion, it's going to sound horrible because it was horrible to begin with. And this comes full circle about the damn source. If your source is not that good, I don't care what you do. It's going to still sound like shit. So
Plus,
understand.
people have to understand that when you buy a car, it could be a fucking Ferrari, it could be a Porsche, it could be a Mercedes. They have to make money on the car, and they're
Exactly.
not going to spend a lot of money in something that is really going to separate music. They're
No,
not going to spend money on any of that because most people are playing compressed music anyway. Most people
exactly.
will never even hear a difference.
Nope.
So why spend money on it? And
Precisely.
when we're doing the aftermarket side of things and we're trying to find any edge that we can get for better sound, that is absolutely going to make a difference very quickly if the equipment's in place. And of course, that the environment is acoustically tuned appropriately to give you that obvious, representation of what that is doing for you.
For the people listening, I also want to help put this in perspective because not every system is a $15,000
No.
plus holy grail. And I feel part of our responsibility when we're dealing with customers is to help them determine that point where switching to an external high res source is appropriate, right? You're not
Mhm.
going to throw a $3,500 Astel Kern player in on a $5,000 system. You're not eating up $3,500 of the budget on a
No,
media player.
no,
And
absolutely not.
part of that this is just off the top of my head, but I feel that obviously I think we all agree that if a car came in and the first thing on the list, at least for me, I believe for Matt, is that we don't want to do any system in any car without having some sort of processor, right?
Yep.
So
Correct.
we're
Yep.
automatically taking a chunk, it may not be defined yet, a chunk aside for the processor, and then we're looking, here's how much budget we have left. The next thing is speakers and speaker location. Can we afford to modify locations? Is there any benefit? What's the benefit for this budget? And then we almost have to at that point split and look at source and amplification. I think is the next logical
100%. I
piece
agree.
in that chain. But again, you can, even with your phone, you can look into higher resolution sources. If you're a
Absolutely.
Spotify user, you can get
Mhm.
you can pay and have a higher resolution file. You can get Tidal. There's the Onkyo high res player. There's a lot
There's
of
a lot of
stuff
ways of
you
doing
can
it.
do to help what you do have already without spending a lot of money,
No,
without
yeah,
having
I
to.
agree 100%, Gary.
I
And
just
and that
I hate to come across sometimes as like everything, like we have to drive the Ferrari. We can't
Right.
oh
we
no,
can't.
no, 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 no. And
That
Yeah.
I completely agree. There's a lot of different ways to get this. And it's like, okay, here's my V30. This is $899. And I will tell you right now, this is an amazing phone. Okay. It's got DSD playback on the analog side. Okay. I come analog out of this thing and I went into my DSP processor in my truck. It sounds amazing. I'm using the DAC and the DAC preamp that's in this thing. Come analog out, go analog in. It sounded fantastic. And it doesn't mean you have to have, the best there is. No, absolutely not. Because a lot of the phones, they are really, really good. They're geared to, and the Androids are geared toward it more than the Apples are.
right.
And that's something, if you're into the music side of things, you might want to consider looking at an Android phone of some kind because they are geared more towards music than Apple is. And I don't even want to go there as why that is the case, but it's very true.
Yeah.
I have found that in systems that if we are using a processor of some kind, I don't care what it is, um, if you're going to have that in the car, then have something like an AMAS 96K or the new LDAP piece that's about to launch, or something like that, to demonstrate to the customer. Grab your phone. Let me show you how good this can sound.
Yeah, you got to show the potential,
You have
100%,
to.
right? Because,
Yeah.
much like I kind of said about the Estelle stuff, is the non-negotiable is I always install the analog input and I play my SP2000. So when the customer picks up their car, they know the full on potential of what that can sound like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, they'll drive home playing their phone through their factory radio, and most likely they're going to just be like, fuck, it doesn't sound as good as it does,
Yeah.
an hour ago. But
What the
that's
hell?
where you get the upsell of that piece. And again, it's not snake oil because like you're showing that this piece is creating a difference so big that it almost sounds like you have different equipment in the car.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
I got to go to bed,
Hey,
guys.
I was gonna say you gotta go to bed. So
Yeah, 1 o'clock. It's after 1
thank
here.
you.
I enjoy the
Thank
evening.
you for coming on.
Sure, let's do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, definitely. Since we don't get SEMA or CES this year, at least we can do this.
Yeah, no shit. So I agree. I'm torn. I'm part of me is really glad not to go to CES, but part of me is like, this is the first time in 26 years I'm not going to be there.
Wow.
Mm.
I know.
Yep.
George Reed, it's like
I've skipped
35.
Wow. I've skipped 2 since 93.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Well,
But
gentlemen, enjoyed it. Thank you all very much.
all right.
Enjoy
Thanks.
your
Thanks
Thank you
again.
much. We'll
Good night,
definitely have
guys.
you on again.
You bet.
It was fun. Obviously, our
Anytime.
conversations can go on forever.
Oh, I know. It's just enjoyed it. Good night, y'all.
Yep.
All
All
right.
right.
See you,
Night.
Nick.